All right. I This is the first time for me streaming on YouTube live. I'm going to try this out. I don't know. Usually I use the TikTok live monitor because I mostly usually only stream on TikTok. So, and I've checked out this restream chat before, um, but the chat messages weren't showing up. So I'm going to try this one more time. Um, let's see here as we get started. This is the same way all of my streams, if you're following me at all, is all my streams start exactly the same way, me playing with the stream. So we're gonna just this is all just a big experiment, right? We're just figuring this out. So I'll bring this over here so I can keep an eye on those. If there's messages come in there, I always like to check my stream delay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's quite a bit of a stream delay on YouTube. TikTok's about 4 or 5 seconds. Um, YouTube is quite a bit more than that. That's okay. That's okay. Welcome to Friday afternoon stream. We're live on TikTok and YouTube today. I've been contemplating going live on a second platform for a little while. It's sort of streaming in general. I'm not going to lie. Just streaming is kind of daunting. It's a little terrifying, if you will. Once you get over that little hump, though, it's not so bad. But it's kind of like this idea of just being out there in the world, I guess. All right, so we're live. We're actually going to. I'm going to set up a new. I'm live on YouTube also today, even though I don't have as much of a following on YouTube, which is fine. We're just trying this out, but just going to say it a few times for my American friends in the face of all of the TikTok stuff going on, that I am available on YouTube. I've tried out Instagram a little bit. We're looking at Airtable. We're going to play with Airtable today. This is a community problem that came in. I was talking with somebody from we just got a little community on Discord where we are working on automation problems. And this is, we're going to work on a really cool, I guess this would be a supply chain problem today. So we're going to say this is, let me see, we're going to call this Coffee Pro. We love coffee. So we're going to work on a fictional problem we have today where we've got, I'll set up the data in a minute, but basically we've got a couple of warehouses that have some stock, 2 different warehouses that have stock, and then we have an order that comes in, to a transfer request, and we want to set up the process of moving stock from one place to another place in our Airtable. That's what we're going to look at today. Is this comp troubleshooting way too sweaty for me? I'm not. We're not troubleshooting anything yet. We're just gonna do some tinkering in Airtable. So Airtable, if you've never played with it, is a little bit of it's kind of like Google Sheets or something like that, but it's lets you do quite a bit more stuff. Let's just get this set up. Let's do this one here. We're gonna rename this table. This is going to be our stock. Let's call this one stock levels. And then we'll create another one here, start from scratch. And we're going to call this transfer requests. Again, this is a community problem, something that came up this week. So let me see. We had to come up with a couple where I'm from Alberta, which is in Canada. So I'm going to pretend that there's a warehouse. We have a coffee warehouse in Edmonton. And then we're going to pretend that we have a coffee warehouse in Oh no, well, let me think about this for a second. Trying to think about the person I was talking with um, showed me this problem, and actually they have. Oh, because this is the product. Okay, so this is the product. Let me rename this column here. This is going to be bean type. So we've got some different types of beans. I don't know. We're just going to make up some. Maybe we should use ChatGPT for this. Hey, ChatGPT, make up 3 fictional types of coffee bean names for my coffee company. Just so I don't have to think. Good enough. Go. Um, could have polled the community, I guess. So, Sierra, these ridiculous names. Sierra Solstice. Okay, we'll use that. So there's this one. Velvet Ember. These names are ridiculous. That's okay. And then what's our third one here? Aurora Bloom. These sound very coffee-ish. Okay, so we've got 3 different, these could be our SKUs or whatever we're tracking this product with. Um, can I get rid of this side panel? Yeah, I never even thought of that. Find a view. Usually you can collapse that. That's okay. All right, then next we've got, in their particular problem, they have a couple of different warehouses. So let me replace a couple of these columns. We don't need this one. We're going to have, and I think the problem was like, this is going to be a number. So we'll change this and let's pretend we have a Edmonton warehouse. Okay. This is the stock, Edmonton stock level. Yes, I do. Save it. And we'll say that this is 30. And then, can I edit that? I don't need decimals. Let's say 0. That's fine there. Save. Oh, I can't see the save button. That's why. And then this one, we'll change this field here also. This is going to be Calgary. Calgary stock. This is also going to be a number. Come on. There we go. And same thing. 0 decimal places is fine. I can't see the save button. There it is. If I make it that small, is that still visible on y'all's? See, I look at my phone over here. That looks pretty tiny. So I'll bump that back up. I don't think we're going to change the fields too much. So, and then Calgary will say, well, let's make this 130. We've got 130 of these in stock, and we've got, say, 35 in Calgary. And then same as this one, we've got 25 here, and we've got, say, 250 here. And then our last one, we're going to say we've got 10. We're low in stock in Edmonton, and we've got 90 in Calgary. So this is the problem. The person I was talking with is trying to solve a supply chain problem in that, and it's a little bit more complicated than this, but the specific problem was we're trying to manage stock between a couple of different locations. And so if we have a transfer request come in, and they're doing this manually in Google Sheets right now, where a bunch of people are going in and leaving notes for each other and doing all of this stuff. And the question was, how do we automate this process so we can make this a little bit more manageable? And I said, well, I think we could do this in Airtable. It should be fairly doable in Airtable. So let's see if we can tackle that. Just one piece of the problem. Now, I recommend this to anybody that's if you're thinking about doing automation, if you're in automation right now, 100% of the time, well, no, there's a 100% chance, I'll say, you're going to run into a problem someday where you're like, there's just way too much. There's just so much here. There's so much of a problem here. There's actually like 15 problems here. How do we approach this from an automation standpoint? And so it doesn't matter if we're in automation. It doesn't matter if we're in, software, whatever that looks like. The way we work with big problems is we make them small problems. So we want to break this down into a small problem. Let's tackle these. Our big problem that's overwhelming is just actually a bunch of small problems chained together. So if we can identify one problem at a time, if we can break this down into one task at a time to try and tackle, that's the way I would approach this. So for our transfer requests, for this one here, I'm just going to say instead of name, what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're just going to call this ID. This is just going to be auto incrementing. We'll probably have a date on this as well. So let me just see. Auto number. Yeah, that works. And auto number is just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and do its own thing. And then for this one, I'll just get rid of these extra rows. What this is going to be is, oh, there we go. We can shut that off. Perfect. So we'll change these fields. We want to say from which warehouse. And these are going to have to match. Actually, what we're going to do, we're going to make this a single select box. And we'll add some options, and we'll have Edmonton, and we'll have Calgary, like this. I want the text to match exactly what's going to be in those other fields. So when we make a transfer request, we're going to select one of those. We'll come back to that. I'm actually going to rename these fields just to be Edmonton and Calgary so that they match. This is one of those tricky bits. I did save that. I did change it. I do want to save it. Calgary stock, save. Okay. So on the transfer request, we're going to have a from, and we're going to duplicate that field. Duplicate, except this time we're going to call it to warehouse. Let's do it that way just to be a little bit more clear. From warehouse to warehouse. We're doing so warehouse, and then this will just be requested by, and we'll just say that this is a single line of text, and then we'll add in the date. Probably going to be a little bit more complicated than this. Let's just say created time. That's fine. That's fine. That's it. So now we've got there we go. Wanted to make that a little smaller. We've got 4 fields on this one, the transfer request. So the trick is going to be that if I say from warehouse Edmonton to warehouse Calgary, oh, we're going to need one more field here that I haven't thought of. It's going to be count. And this is going to be a number. Don't need any decimal places. This is going to be the trick. Right here. We could probably even skip the requested by. If I say the count is 20, from Edmonton to Calgary, the count is 20. When I create this record, okay, it's going to do a couple things. One is it's going to give me a nice history. I can see the history of what's happened over time. But when I create that, I actually want it to actually change these numbers. That's the problem we're trying to solve today. If I create a record in this transfer requests, then I want to actually change the records. From, to, count. Requested by, it probably doesn't matter. I would put that in there. I'm thinking now we're going to need one more field in here that is going to be a status field. I'm going to make this a single select, and then it's going to be in progress, and then we'll say finished. So anybody just joining in, we're trying to solve this problem. So this is a community question this week where somebody said, we've got this supply chain issue where we have a number of different warehouses. So in my project here, I'm a coffee bean distributor, and we've come up with some fictional coffee beans, and we have 2 warehouses. We have an Edmonton warehouse, and we have a Calgary warehouse, and these are our stock levels for each of our different types of coffee. And what we want to do is submit a transfer request using a form of some kind. We'll set that up in a minute. But we're going to have the levels. If somebody submits a transfer request, so this is going to be Aaron, okay? The status is going to be in progress. If we have a transfer request come in for 20 to go from Edmonton to Calgary, I want to look at a couple of different ways of automating this process. We could either have it happen automatically so that the numbers are just adjusted, or we could even have it so that it was a bit of a manual process, but we can probably add some forms or have it so that humans could click buttons you know, and have the things move behind the scenes. For instance, if I just put in a transfer request from Edmonton to Calgary, there's probably a status in here. Um, we have, let's actually adjust this. This one's going to be requested. That's going to be our initial status. We're going to have finished, so it's completed or fulfilled, maybe fulfilled. And then we might have one called in transit. Maybe that's, I'm not in supply chain, but I'm assuming, you're going to have something like that. So the default on this is going to be requested. So as soon as we create a record in this table, right? If it goes to the requested status, maybe we could have it so that it automatically removes those 20 from the origin warehouse, and then when it gets to the fulfilled status, then it deposits those 20 in the destination warehouse. Maybe we could do that. Daddy says the initial table should be different. It should be bean, location, volume. Yeah, you could do it that way. I'm working with the structure that so you're basically working with like primary index, secondary index. You end up with a lot of records. So that way, so you end up with Sierra Solstice, Edmonton 25, Sierra Solstice, Calgary 35. You could do it that way. Either way would work fine. This is the structure that they're using right now. Again, this is a community problem, so I'm just working with the structure that I was presented with to see if we can approach a solution within that structure. That's sort of what I'm working with what I was presented with here today. So how would we do this? I think, first of all, one of the cool things about Airtable is the ability to run automations. So we might look at that. Is there a way that we can set up an automation in here? I see my screen's kind of scrunched. So let me see if I can find the spot where it actually shows me the automation. Oh, here we are, right there. So what we can do here is say we can add a trigger in. Let's see if I can bump that back up. Add a trigger in that says when a record is created, and then some advanced logic or action. I don't think this is going to allow us to do the actual, so we can create a record here. Let me see, update records. So yeah, probably we could accomplish this. Let's just see how far we can get with that. Let me go back to the data. I want to make sure that this only happens when we have a requested status. So let's see how far we can get with that. So when a record is created, let's see if we can fix this. I have to make this smaller, unfortunately. Let me do it this way. Airtable's complaining that this is too small. Let me see if I change this. Let me switch over to this view here. I'll try that. And then I should be able to make this a little bit bigger. Yeah, I have to make this a little bit larger in order for, so I can drag this over. You can see that bit there. That'll work. Okay. It's always, there's always challenges in streaming in a vertical format. You got to kind of navigate this stuff as we go here. So it wants to know what table. So we're going to set up an automation that says when a record is created, and the record is going to be created in our transfer request table. We'll just say use suggested record. That's fine. So it ran and it plucked out a value for us to play with. But we need to tweak the logic a bit, because just because a record was created, that doesn't mean that it has all of the criteria that we want. So I'm going to click on advanced logic or action. So let me see here. Conditional logic is probably what we want, because we don't want to process just any record. We only want to run if, let's see. We'll go down to status. So this is the record that it's brought in, this example record. And so We want to only run this if status is requested. I think that's what we would do. So now I think if the status is requested, we're going to add an action to this. I think we're going to need to run, I'll try this with update record. We're sort of figuring this out on the fly. We're figuring this out on the fly. So what we're going to do, if the status is requested, actually, you know what? I think I'm actually going to, I'm not in supply chain, so I'm making this up as I go. If you're in supply chain, feel free to leave some comments. So we'll say decrement source, decrement source warehouse. Tito says low code is for noobs. That's not elitist at all. So I don't think so. I got 2.5 decades in software. I worked with companies all over the world. I've built cloud systems, DevOps, security. I've worked in all kinds of stuff, and I use no code and low code tools every day. Why? Because they make my job easier. They make the industry more accessible. And it would be foolish not to learn how to use these tools because they're a different paradigm of building. So, I mean, or don't, Tito, don't use them. That's fine. The paradigm is different because when you build something with low code or no code, you are taking the responsibility of managing a significant chunk of that, and you're outsourcing that portion. You're still building the logic, you're still building the app, but you're outsourcing the management of some piece of it. And so it's not about being a noob or not a noob. It's actually more strategic than that. Okay, so we're figuring this out. If our status is requested in our stock levels warehouse, I think we need to find a record because this is going to want a record ID. I think it wants a record ID specifically. So what we need to do is before we can update a record, we need to find the record. So let's see if we can pull this off. This is called Airtable. We're setting up an automation in Airtable right now. So anybody who's new on the live, I'll just back up a tiny bit. We jump into our data. We've got this problem, We've got this problem where our user has stock levels. So we're working with our fictional coffee company here. We have some data warehousing around our coffee beans. We have 3 different types of coffee beans, and we have 2 warehouses with varying stock levels. And we want to put in a transfer request that will move stock levels from one warehouse to another warehouse. But we want to partially automate this process or put some guardrails in place because right now, this is a community problem. Right now, they are managing it with notes and various things in a bunch of Google Sheets, and they're having trouble scaling the process. So we're just looking at that. How far can we get with automating this a little bit? So we've started out an automation. Let me flip over here. We've started out with this automation a little bit, and I've got to kind of move my browser around so that you can see it in this vertical format, but we'll make it work. So I don't think we can update the record yet. When the record is created in the transfer request, if the status is requested, we have to, I think, do a search. So we're going to add an action to this group. It's going to be find records. I think I need to move this below. And in the find records box, let's see. Find records. I need to, sorry, I'll bump that back up again. So we're going to look up the appropriate warehouse. So the transfer request is from, say, Calgary to Edmonton. So we're going to look in the stock levels table. We're going to search on the view. Grid view's fine. Where are the conditions here? Find records based on view. We're learning this simultaneously at the same time. So it found a bunch of records, but I want to be able to filter based on a specific record. We have a couple questions here. Daddy says, just a dog whistle, writing binary doesn't make you a better programmer, just slow. And the same goes with coding. Honestly, if you write code, then you have to manage the code, and your code degrades over time because all of the overlying and underlying portions of your software are changing. If you write a browser extension, or if you write an iPhone app, the iPhone operating system changes. So all of a sudden, Apple puts out a bunch of new security features or a new API or SDK or whatever that looks like, and you are forced to upgrade your app in order to work on the newest version of the phone. And so if you're using a third-party system like, I don't think it's React Native anymore, it's called something else or whatever that looks like, you're outsourcing that part of it so you can just focus on what you're doing. Low code is the same. I work with companies who are working on their library is stuck in a version of a programming language that was end of life 5, 6, 8 years ago or a decade ago. Yeah, this is a super common problem because they're moving so slowly they now have to rewrite their entire infrastructure to work with the newer version of the programming language, and they're scrambling, right? So these are different paradigms. That's not to say you can't run into those problems in low code or no code systems, right? It's just about what do you want to spend your time doing. No conditions in the trigger step. Okay, thank you. We're learning this together. I'm not going to claim to be an Airtable pro. We are just solving this together. My claim was I think we can do this with Airtable. I know how I would do this if I was programming, but I think we can do it with Airtable. Let's try it out. Daddy's saying this is the problem with the table I mentioned earlier. You are bean first currently. Put in a request to Airtable about it recently. Interesting. Another way I might approach this, if this is not possible, and see, I've played with the automations in Airtable just a little bit, and I find them super limited, I'll say, right? Because we could go one approach, and we could say, well, on one hand, you could set up a simple like make.com scenario that watches those records and do it that way. Like that'd be fairly straightforward to do. I don't really like that approach per se, because now you have things in two different systems. But let's just take a really quick look. What would that look like? We're just exploring, so let's do that. I'll just log in here really quick. Another option, so make.com, that would mean that we have the data in one place, and then we have our automations in another place. So that would be one option. The original thought that I had was we'll just use a script, right? So you can add in some JavaScript. Might be a way to do that if we have the script extension installed. That might be another way that we could approach this. There's probably going to be trade-offs to each, and again, we want to keep these as simple as possible, because whenever we're automating something, one of the things that we're going to run into is that if something goes wrong, we need to know it when it went wrong. We need to sort of let ourselves. That might be one of the advantages of going with something like make.com. We create a new scenario, right? And then we'll just straight into Airtable and we'll watch records. Then if something goes wrong, we have an opportunity here to, let me just get authenticated with the right. So let's use auth. Let me get signed in here. I want to add this to, let me see, what did we call that? Coffee Pro. Yeah, grant access. So the flip side is now that we're in two different systems, which is a little bit annoying. Now we've got stuff over here and stuff over here, and we couldn't do that in one place. So we're in the Coffee Pro base, right? Select the table, transfer requests. The upside is that now we're in make.com, we can do whatever we want. We've got a lot of options in terms of, okay, trigger field, it's got to be the date. And then a field that is used as the label for the record, I think we'll just use the ID. I think we just want to process one at a time. And then what we can do, and it'll allow us to do a formula as well. And let me see, that's probably going to be, grid view. An Airtable formula used to filter records. This is another one of those areas where it's like, all right, I better go read the documentation. So the formula will be to evaluate each record. And then I think for now we'll leave that alone, because it's safe to assume that, or for now, like unless our requirements change. Right now, if we create a transfer request, by default, it's going to come in under the requested status. And then from there, we're going to decrement the stock level on the source warehouse, right? Then we could have a canceled status maybe that puts it back in the source warehouse. There's a few different things that we can do here. Let's just see how far we get with this. There was another comment here. How important is memory management? Sorry, I missed that comment. I'm not sure in which context you mean. Daddy says, how do you plan on accommodating travel time? You might need another table if that's the case. Possibly. My solution is probably overly simplistic right now. Travel time, the way I was thinking about approaching this was just having an in-transit status. So when it goes to in transit, the, say if there's 20 items in here, those 20 just sort of stay locked up in this transfer request, and they don't exist on either stock level until the status goes to fulfilled. As soon as it hits fulfilled, then that stock level hits the other table. Again, I'm not in supply chain. I'm just approaching this from purely a simplistic, probably an overly simplistic kind of a software perspective. So if I'm missing pieces, definitely chime in. Let me know if there's something I haven't thought about. Supply chain is super complex. And so, again, one of the things that I try to do whenever I come into a problem that's like really, really complex is try to break it down into small problems. If we can knock down the big part of this problem and then move on to the next piece, try and tackle those one at a time, as opposed to just, if we try to solve everything at the same time, it's just going to be overwhelming, and there's a good chance we're not going to make any progress on it. So I do recognize completely that this is an overly simplistic approach. We're just kind of exploring to see how far we can get with it. From now on, so watch records, excuse me. And then from here, we can start to I'll set some conditions. So let's see, the first thing I want to do, we'll add a module to, I think all we need to do on this one is just do another Airtable that's going to update a record. Let's see how far we can get with that. Let me see. Oh my goodness, which Airtable? I bet it's going to be this one. Find out in a minute. Nope, let's try the now. I've got 14 different Airtable connections here. We'll have to just go through them one at a time. Nope, that one doesn't work either. One of these ones. Nope, not that one. One of these has to work. We're playing, no, not that one. We're playing Airtable Bingo here. There we go, Coffee Pro. And I'm pretty sure I just... And it's going to be the stock levels table we want to adjust. Ah, I see. We're going to need to do the same thing here. Okay, let me back up. Okay. First of all, I should go rename that connection. So let me map this out. The first thing that we need to do is find this record. And this was the problem someone was speaking to earlier. So we need to, if this transfer request, the from warehouse is Edmonton, we want to find oh, actually, that's another thing. Interesting. We need to link to the actual bean type as well. Ah, the plot thickens. Okay, let's see. Can we get away with just using a single line text for this? Let's call this skew for lack of a better. Okay. So we'll pretend that this belongs here. I see your comment there. 1 second. I'll get to it. Okay. So in transit, Daddy says, in transit only works if you can limit the trigger to on change for a specific column. The date can change. The date shouldn't change because it's the created. This specific field is the created time, so it should only happen once. It should not be, theoretically, it should not be possible to change this value. The other thing that we'll do is that we'll set a filter on our workflow so that it only sort of trickles through our workflow if the status is exactly what we're expecting. Yeah, so we'll get there. Well, let's see how far we can get with this. We're coming up with this on the fly. I know a lot of the content you probably watch, creators on YouTube and stuff, the scripted stuff. I'm just making this up as I go, so we'll see how far we can get with it. The one thing I want to do though is let's do search records. Pretty sure we need, yeah, it's okay. It's using the right one now. Coffee Pro. On the table, I want to look at stock levels. And then, let me see, the views grid, that's fine. We need a formula. Let me get zoomed in here. Airtable formula to filter records. So what this is going to be is we're going to say the bean type matches the input. So we're going to have to test this out in a minute. I'm going to put the limit to 1. And the formula, I wonder if we can say, let me see. How would I do this? Can I just do, I've never done formulas here. So is it just going to be like this, bean type equals, and then that's going to be, I'll leave that for now. We actually need to refresh this because I've added a field to that table. So let me go back to the table, refresh that, transfer requests, and then does that give me the new field? Date status requested by count from ID. No, not yet. That's fine. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run this once. And then SQ, there it is. Okay. So I don't know if this formula works because I'm not familiar with Airtable formulas. We'll find out in a second. Maybe ChatGPT can help us out. I need a formula for my make.com scenario. Boy, my voice to text doesn't always work that great. Where I am matching on a column called to match a value that is being passed in as a variable in my to match a variable let's try that. So it's saying that the map function, but that doesn't make sense. So it's using make.com stuff. Sorry, that's ChatGPT's giving us a red herring. So we'll say Airtable formulas. We'll just get up to date on that real quick. If anybody knows the formula, just feel free to toss it in the chat. That'll fast track us here. So number of apples. Let me see. Is there an expression? Formula foundations. No, troubleshooting essentials. I can't say I think I've used a formula in Airtable once. So creating formula fields. So it's not the field that I want, though that's probably going to be helpful. You know what, I'm going to run this because I think it is something like this. So let me see here. We'll choose where to start. All records. And then we'll just run this once. Yeah, it didn't like our formula. For sure. Definitely that formula is not going to work. So let me see this again. Oh, here we are. There's even a link to help us out. Eventually, and that took us to exactly where we were. Plain text. So is there an equality formula? Record functions, text operators. Yeah, that's going to be for concatenation. I think we want to do like a comparison. Record functions, created time. I don't think we want a regular expression. So let me see. Working with dates, time zone, record function text, numeric column, solutions, intermediate. Airtable formula to compare field value to string. Let's try that. Wait a second. Oh, I see. I wonder if we can do this. I might just be that I don't have parentheses around that. Name equals. And then do I need, instead of quotes, I need to use, we'll try that. Sort of like inferring our response here. So, choose where to start. All records. Okay, run. Nope, still doesn't like our formula. Invalid. Check your formula syntax. Logical and conditionals. So is that how that works? Do you want it to? Do you want to use like a conditional, like an if statement to say a true value is going to return you that record? I'm not going to lie. I'm super brand new to how this is supposed to work. For instance, this makes sense to me. This text comparison here, right? Like saying, you know, if the status is whatever, we're going to get this value. But I don't want. But this check mark is the value we're going to get back, and so they're using this formula to change the display. But I assumed that the formula would see. But the thing about that is it still going to return something? If we return false, does that mean it just won't return, make the return an empty string? Okay, that seems like the wrong way to do it. That seems really counterintuitive, but if it's the right way to do it, sure, we'll try it. Daddy's doubling down on this. I would strongly suggest you change the 3 tables: warehouse stock, change order, transit stock. We could do that. Yep, stock that's in transit. That's going to double the amount of operations. Let's get this working first, and then come back to it. No, I do appreciate that though. I don't want to minimize your suggestion here, because again, I'm not in supply chain, so you're probably right. Once we get to the place where we understand how all of these pieces work, once we get to sort of the first version in place, then I'll be like, all right, now let's go to the next more complicated version of this. I don't want to start with the most complicated version of this because we're still figuring out how to select a record from Airtable, right? Let's get all of the technical quirks out of the way, and then we can always make it more complicated. It's hard to make things more simple, right? So definitely, I appreciate your input. So the suggestion here is that we should be using an if statement. So I'll try that. And then so what should be the if else, or so the if statement? If I return true, does that mean I'm going to get the record back? But you're saying an empty string. So I just see intuitively that says to me that I'm going to get a record with an empty string, which seems strange, but that's fine. Oh, I see. No, I see. You're saying it right here. The record will be included as long as it's not. Okay, that makes sense. Let's just do that. If, and let me see. I think we needed to do bean type equals, and then we need SQ for that, right? Okay, so you were completely right about this, and I just wasn't even paying attention. So interesting. For example, to only include records where name is an empty pass and not name. All right, so they do use commas. So let's go true, false. That should be it. If bean type is equal to skew. Let's try that. Now, do we need to pass in? Well, let's just test it and see what happens. Oops. Choose where to start. All. Oh, I didn't actually click that. Choose where to start. Try it again. There we go. Run once. Still didn't like that formula. Makes me wonder. It's saying the syntax is still bad. I wonder if we need quotes around this piece. Try that. Oops. Zoomed in. I got to get zoomed out. Choose where to start. And I recognize that this is a tricky problem on Airtable's side to try and. It still doesn't like my formula. Let me check my comments here. Jesse says, I was using this one, it was still called Integromat. Yep. Evan says, check the docs right about where the values are interpreted as true. Check the docs right there about what values are interpreted as true. I don't think that's the problem with our syntax. It says right here in this little bit that if the result is 0, false, empty string, not a number, or empty list, or an error, then it will not include that record in the response. But I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is that I suspect this part of our formula is incorrect in some way. Again, this is my first foray into formulas in Airtable from this perspective. It's always the simple things I think that I fight with. So, and I wonder, it makes me wonder if it's because I have a space in there and they're using single quotes. Sometimes these little details matter. Let's try that out. If bean type equals SQ, let's see what that does. This is quite literally what software engineering feels like sometimes. Tweaking one little thing and then trying it again. Tweaking one little thing and trying it again. So that still didn't work. So that formula, I'm confident, is good. Let me see what other operators we have here. So because they have this one operator, I quite literally need the opposite of this not operator. I quite literally just need, see, and I would have thought this should work, or something like this should work. This looks like a perfectly good formula to me. Again, I'm not, I don't work for Airtable, so I can't say for sure. But I did put some quotes in there, so let's try that. All. Run it again. Hey, that worked. What did we get back? So we got a bundle back, Edmonton, Calgary. So there we go. I'm just going to put that on screen just so we can. So this is what ended up working for the formula right there. I think what was missing is I didn't have quotes around the SKU part the first time. So we've got the formula working. Just a few hoop jumping. I'm a professional hoop jumper here. Just getting caught up on my comments here. Thanks for helping me. Thanks for sticking around, helping me struggle through that. That's honestly my day job sometimes. It's just trying to get the documents to match practice. Questions. Mitchie, is getting clients hard for automations in the US? Germany businesses are so behind. Yes and no. It's getting people's time or getting, so the problem I find, I'm actually in Canada, but the problem I find is that people are too busy to, they're behind because they're too busy, or they have, their businesses are successful or whatever, for whatever reason. So it's not necessarily that getting clients is the hard part. It's sometimes just getting to a conversation. I think if you can get to the place where your clients, where you can communicate the value that you're selling, this is how much I can make changes in your business, and this is the difference we can make. If you can get to the point where you can communicate that, then finding clients is not the hard part. Sometimes understanding their processes or understanding the things that they're having problems with, the full picture, all of those communication things are the problem. Like, I'll talk with clients sometimes where after our third conversation, I'm starting to actually get into what the problems are. But yeah, there's lots of businesses that are, quote unquote, behind. Why are you not using AI with the documentation? We should have. I've used it. This is just my process. So I'm a generalist. I'm a software dev, but I am not specialized in any one thing. The way my brain works is I will just keep pushing buttons until I figure it out. And then eventually I'll be like, oh yeah, there's documentation. I should go look at that. We spent more time on that than we should have, but it's okay. We're learning. And yeah, there is that button there. I have used it a couple of times, that little AI thing. Evan says, you could debug this in Airtable as a formula itself. It's a great idea. Yep, that would have been a great way to approach this, for sure. Coffee Globe says, I did not join the live in time. Can you please explain what you're trying to do? So we've got an overly simplistic use case here. This is a community problem that came in this week. By the way, I've started a free community. It's just a Discord. If anybody's in automation or thinking about getting in automation, we just started a small community where folks can come in and support each other with some of this stuff. I don't have any courses or anything like that. It's just mostly a place where we can help each other out as we navigate some of these tools. My whole thing is about bridging the tech gap. And I'm coming from the software world into the sort of automation, low code world. Automation was my day job in the software industry. And so I see how all of these same skills apply to the business world. So if that's something that interests you, there's a link in my bio. Go check it out. There's no obligation for anything. We're just kind of hanging out in there. So the problem is we're working on today is a sort of a minimal supply chain problem where we've got a person this was a community problem that came in. They've got a warehouse, these different warehouses with different stock levels and different products, and they have these transfer requests that come in, and they need to manage the transfer of stock from one warehouse to another. And they're doing all of this sort of manually in spreadsheets with notes and things, and it's just a big jumble of everything. And they're trying to come up with a process for how to do this. And so I just thought, this is a great problem. I'm not in supply chain. I know it's probably way more complicated than this, but I just want to see how I could approach this using the tools. How far can we get? What are the different approaches? What are the pros and the advantages and disadvantages for the different approaches? Because there's no right way to do it necessarily. The way that works for you is the right way, but we have a lot of different options. Again, we sort of started off in the automations tab here, looking at maybe an automation, but we quickly found that there were limitations. And so somebody who was on the live, I'm not sure if they're still here, they were recommending changing the record structure so that we could do the lookups easier. And so I'm sticking to the structure that they have right now, just to see if I can make it work. And then we immediately went over to make.com. Okay, can we add in an external workflow, which again comes with disadvantages. Now we have a separate system we need to maintain, but also there's some advantages in there in that it gives us a little bit more robust error handling. We can send off notifications to Slack or different systems, emails. There's a lot more we can do. We can get a little bit more complex. We still want to try and keep things simple, but we can build in a little bit more complexity. And another option yet, something we hadn't looked at yet, is we could get into the JavaScript scripting extension. I think I've played with this a few times, scripting. So we could add this extension and have a script that runs that might do this stuff for us too. That's another option. We're not there yet, but we might have a look at that. So we'll just come back to the data. This is our overly simplistic problem. Shift the minimal fields. I think it was Daddy that recommended we should have another table instead of having, and I think that's actually a good approach. We'll come back to that. But basically we've got, when this transfer request comes in, a person is going to request a certain number of stock be transferred from one warehouse to another warehouse. And so when it's in transit, we might want to track that in a separate table. And I think that probably makes sense. The way now this is overly simplistic in that we have this sort of requested in transit fulfilled. Another way I might do this, instead of actually having this, I would probably have these records. Like I think about other ETL scenarios that I've been in with inventory and things like that. Instead of changing this record from requested to fulfilled, another thing I've seen happen, or I've used in the past, is having the records be immutable, so that basically one record comes in, and then when the status changes, it's like a log. So eventually everything will end up with 3 records. One will say requested, one will say in transit, one will say fulfilled. So if you ever see one particular order number that only has 2 of those records, it doesn't have the 3rd one, then you can always sort of tell the state. That's another way you could approach this. That's a little bit more complex than I wanted to get today. We'll just see if we can get through this little bit. And then in theory, we could build it out from there. Okay, so we haven't done anything yet. We've just sort of watched a record. This bundle has come in. We've got this transfer request came in. We've got our from warehouses Edmonton, our to warehouses Calgary, and then our amount is 20. So yeah, that's perfect. So then we needed to do a search against the other table to see if we could find the type of coffee bean that we were talking about and what the stock levels were. Now we're going to approach this from, again, an overly simplistic standpoint, because we start to get into, well, what if the stock level, what if the stock, let's actually do that right now. We could do a branch here. What if the stock levels were, what if the request was greater than the, what if the stock level request was greater than the amount that's actually in inventory, right? That's one way you could approach, but it's one problem you're going to have to handle. Thank you. It's okay. I'll drink them both. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a variable here. Daddy says, I would remove in transit for now. It makes the initial problem harder. I don't disagree with you. We'll just ignore that it's there for now, because we're just, mostly what we're doing is just playing with the tools. How far can we get with connecting the bits together? How might we approach the different logic puzzles? How do they work together? Can we sort of model this out? So again, I don't disagree with you. We'll just explore this for a little bit. This one logic problem we have right now is, we'll just say, what do we want to call this? Sufficient inventory. And we'll say enough stock. Have enough stock. So we want to know the variable value. I think the result of this is going to be like a true value, a true false. And so on the incoming data, the original request was for 20. And so we need to reach into, oh, this will be fun actually, because we've got we need to reach into this bundle I've never done this before. We need to reach into this bundle and because reaching into this bundle will give us that value. I've never actually done this before, so this is a really interesting problem. I can't just pick Edmonton, even though I know. Wow, how do you solve this problem? The problem here I have is that the transfer request is coming in from the from warehouse is Edmonton. So I have this variable called from warehouse, and I got this value back from, sorry, not there, it's here. The value I got back in the bundle, I have an Edmonton key, but I need to use the string value of Edmonton to reach into this bundle's key to get the value 130 out, because I want to be able to compare those two numbers. So this is super interesting. This is something I've never done in make.com before. That's fine. We might have to ask the AI, because I think we can go the record search, watch records, record search. So this is node number 3. So I think we can go 3 dot let me see, from warehouse. I don't know if this is going to work because it's not a map value. I'm going to run this and see what happens. I'm not convinced that's going to work. And I'm in a place where I'm like, I'm not actually sure how to make that work. Let's just run this whole thing. So the variable output is what? No, the variable output was just the raw string value of what I put in. So that's super interesting. How do we extract something from the output bundle here? And I can't just click on the bundle there. Super interesting. Let me think about this for a minute. A couple questions in the comments. Are you scraping data with the bot? No, not at the moment. I am, we're working on a kind of a really minimal supply chain kind of problem. And just more so from the sense of seeing how we can wire the tools together and solve logic puzzles, if you want to think of it that way. So we're just playing with make.com and Airtable today. Prettykin says, thoughts on Zapier versus N8N? I'm looking at N8N. I was actually going to do some stuff with N8N today. There's a few things in N8N that are really cool because you can have multiple triggers. I like the way that they handle multiple triggers within scenarios. They have a new agents feature, which I think is really cool. I like the way that their nodes connect together. When you have nodes that have multiple outputs, you get to sort of build up a little bit more advanced workflows. So I think N8N makes a lot of sense for slightly more complex scenarios, and they handle some things really nicely. Unfortunately, I don't think they have a free tier. I think they have a free trial, but then you have to sort of sign up on their base level. It's 20 euros or something like that. Yeah. You can also, as Prettykin says, you can pull it down locally and run the community version. That's another option too. Yeah. Make.com does have a free tier. I think you run out of credits pretty quick though. Yeah. Daddy says Edmonton is implicitly the index. Your table is going to scale horizontally with the warehouses. Yeah, that might be one way to do this. Is it's going to make it's going to make the lookup a little bit easier. I'm still interested in see, the problem is if I go back to that, then this is we're working with a community problem today where somebody came into our group and asked about how do we solve this problem. And so I'm working with the data structure that they have already. I could go back and tell them to change their data structure, but I kind of don't want to. So we'll see. I also, having this exact problem is super interesting because there is no key from this particular output. All of the keys I have are just like, Edmonton, Calgary, bean type, ID, so on and so forth. I can't actually key off of this bundle that I'm aware of. And so you're right, we may have to adjust the data structure just to be able to read from that. So I need to actually read from, the search records. I need to be able to reach into this object here and grab this, but I'm not quite sure. I thought the syntax for that, maybe it's, let me see if I can come up with a phrasing that this AI will tell us how to do this. Let's see, I have a key in my output bundle called Edmonton. And I have a value from my input, let me see, called, I'm just going to call it a variable. I have a variable from my input called from warehouse, and I'm not sure how to grab the key from my last output bundle. Is this possible? I'm super curious if this is something we can actually do. So, well, apparently my credits roll over every. See, I was scared of using my 100 credits in Make.com, but they roll over every 7 days, so that's kind of fun. So the AI is saying. By the way, I tried this AI last week, and it was. I think we tried it on the last live. There was a couple that it got right, and then there was one that was just kind of comically wrong. So identify the module. So to map the Edmonton key from your output to from warehouse and your input, you create a mapping between the two. It's saying identify the module in which your scenario produces that, create the mapping. This doesn't help at all. Create the mapping. Map the Edmonton key from the output. Since you have missing connections, you'll need to set up the following. Click on module, click on create next connection, log into the service. Yeah, this seems like one of those laughably wacky answers that AI gives you, which is disappointing because it's given me really great answers. Let's try it this way. Is there a way to manually specify a variable from a specific module? Some kind of manual syntax. Doesn't require clicking on the variable. Let's try that. Comments. Grab the ID. So Nick is saying grab the ID and use the ID all the time if it doesn't change. Oh, I see. It's double. Oh, let's try that. I was using a single curly brace. So I think it is 3, and then if we do that, nope, that's going to give us 130. Sorry, it's going to be this. So it is from the module number 3, but we want the value Edmonton. Let's try that and see what that does. See, I thought there was a way to do that, but let's run this again and see what happens. Choose where to start. It's saying that it doesn't like, because... How do I do this now? I need to, so this variable from warehouse resolves to Edmonton, but now it's complaining that there's a syntax issue, which makes sense because under the hood, as we're interpolating it, we're ending up with too many curly braces. So what we need to do is try and figure out how can we put these together? So, you know what? I don't think the AI from Make.com is going to help us out here. I'm going to take a screenshot of this and send it in a ChatGPT, and we'll see if we can get somewhere with that. Hey, my buddy Taryn's on the live. You guys need a DJ. My good friend's a wicked DJ. Oh, yeah. It's Friday night. Let's see here. So I've got this make.com scenario where I'm trying to use a variable from one module to extract another variable from another module. You can see the example in my screenshot here. this gives me an error because of the way that we're interpolating the strings. Is there a proper way to do this, or is it possible? Drop our screenshot in there. Let ChatGPT think about it. Let me see. Bimmer Codex says Claude is better. I don't think it matters. Oh, that's super interesting. That's super interesting. So we're doing some like advanced variable sort of interpolation. I'm gonna try this out. It's saying that make sure the path we're referencing matches the output, and then it's saying we might need to do some string manipulation to sort of replace. Yeah, no, there's no spaces in there. That's fine. So let's just try this. Let's try from warehouse. And now what I'm thinking is because we have that space in there, it almost makes me wonder if we should rename that field just to simplify this. Let's try this. This might work. I have no idea. We're going to find out in a minute. All right, so that, yeah, and because there's a space in there, it doesn't like it. So we're going to try this. We're deep in the rabbit hole now. Holy, no, that won't work either. Because it's turning, as soon as we paste the value in, it's turning it into a variable because of those double curly braces. So, okay, let me try something. What I'm going to do is go back to our Airtable. I'm going to rename these fields just to simplify and remove the space because that's giving us grief right now. And we're going to say, let's call it from and to. From, well, do this, from warehouse. Yeah, we'll just take the space out. And then to warehouse, same thing. So it's still really clear what the fields are. From warehouse to warehouse, count, requested by. We might as well do all of them at the same time because inevitably we're going to need to reference another one of these fields. And I should have known having the spaces in there. Eddie says, I think 3.1 from warehouse is the variable. Let's see if that will get rid of all that. I didn't even know you could do this, you know. But the thing is that, see, that would work except there's a space in there. So when I paste that in, it ends up breaking the variable in half. And it says this one doesn't resolve and this one just doesn't exist. So I don't think that will work, or maybe it will. We can just run it and see what it does. I'm down with that. We've sort of hacked make.com maybe. I don't know. Let's try it. What happens? Oh, you know what's going to happen though? We renamed that field. I'm not going to change it back. Just run it and it'll break. That's fine. What happened here? It did try to resolve that as a variable. That's super interesting. That's super interesting. Now I want to name that back just to see if it would work. All right, change the name back. Choose where to start. That's just so strange and interesting. No, it still says it's empty. So it's just not resolving this value. It just doesn't. I think because the spaces in there, it just doesn't work. There's some magic under the hood, however make.com works. Okay, we'll just rename this so it's 1. Try that. From warehouse. Choose where to start. All and run. Still won't do anything, but we'll just double check that the data. So yeah, those have been renamed properly. From and to, that's fine. And then so if I'm understanding this correctly, let's take what ChatGPT is saying we should do. Let me just adjust it because it's not going to be that anymore. It's actually going to be that. Oh no, capital W. So this, what I'm hearing is this should work. And it kind of resolves funny. Choose where to start. All. Now, do we get a value there? Nothing. Yeah, it still doesn't resolve. So it's an interesting problem. it's a super interesting problem because we've sort of got two layers of variables here, right? We've got sort of the inner variable is being used as a lookup on the outer variable. So, and at the end of the day, I don't think it matters if we're using Claude or ChatGPT. If it's ensure there are no extra brackets. No. Let me just read through and make sure there's nothing I missed here. So I think I think let's back up. That didn't quite work because we need the output of one module to help us select the output from another module. Here's an example of how we are trying to use the variables. And then we'll do that, except I'm going to do this. You can see here that we're trying to use the output from the module 1. As part of the variable selection from the output from module 3. Again, I don't know if this is possible. Yeah, concat, let's try that. Or 3 dot. We're going to try all of these things. Oh, and you know what's super interesting? We could do this. Yeah, we could do this from a I just thought of actually a way that would simplify this without all the nonsense, but we will try all of these. So it's saying, text concatenate. I don't know what any of these will actually work, but use the map function for nested lookups. Map 3 dot output. Is 3 dot output a thing? I didn't even know you could do that. So we're deep into the bowels of make.com now. Like I know map is a function, right? But I didn't know you could go like 3 dot output. I didn't realize that was a thing. Because typically when you go here, like this is the problem, right? We need to be able to access not necessarily this list of variables here, right? I need to access the top level module here. And so I take this with a grain of salt when it's saying 3 dot output. I'm like, is that really a thing? Can we actually do that? Key to reference one from warehouse. But I just thought of another way that we could do this. AJ, I'll answer your question in just a second. I thought of another way that we can do this. We know what our warehouses are. So another way we could do this is, I'm actually just going to drop this for a minute. Yeah, I'm going to drop this module. We know we have two, sorry, let me go back to the output of this one here. We retrieved the, this is the stock transfer. This one is this is the stock count. So we did the lookup based on, remember we have our fictional, we'll just back up for 5 seconds so I could talk through this one more time. This is our fictional scenario, or semi-fictional. This is a community problem that came in this week. So we have a small Discord community where people can get together and help each other with their automations. Links in the bio if you want to join. So we've got this minimal supply chain issue here where we've got a few different SKUs. These are our coffee bean types. We have an Edmonton warehouse and a Calgary warehouse, okay? And then we've got different stock levels. And when a transfer request comes in, we want to move the stock from one to the other. And then we'll get more complex from there. But I just realized one thing we can do that would actually simplify this is we're going to use the JSON module. Instead of, I think what we can do is we can say create JSON. I'm just going to arbitrarily build a structure. I'm going to say the specification. This is going to be a number. I'm going to say Edmonton because we have a fixed number of warehouses, remember? So, and this is going to be a number. And default, oh no, this is not what I want. I'll use the parse JSON module. That one, there's what we want. So I'm going to create a JSON string, and I'm going to say the Edmonton level is going to be let me see that one, and the Calgary level is going to be that one. That should be sufficient. Let me run this one more time. That should give us enough of a level. That should give us an object that we can work with instead of trying to work with the output bundle of an actual make.com module. That should give us something that we can select that value from. So that is, oh no, that gives us exactly the same thing, didn't it? That just parsed it. No, so I need to put that into a JSON string. If I set a variable, I wonder if there is something to, let's just try something here. Set variable. We're just going to call this test 3.output. I just want to see if this is a thing. It doesn't look like it's a thing, but I'm going to run it once. Choose where to start, all. I think we've picked the most obscure problem in make.com today to try and figure out how to use the output dynamically from one. We never really meant to get into this problem. And if we'd have listened to Daddy probably an hour ago, we would we'd have probably skipped all of this. Try concatenate. All right, I'll try your suggestion next. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. Let's go back to set variable again. And we'll just call this test for now. So there was a suggestion. Taryn had a suggestion here. I don't think, I'll try Taryn's next. I don't know that this will work. We'll try it. Oh, I see. I think there's a typo in there because it's a capital F, I think. So let me do that. I don't know if this will work. We'll find out in a minute. We're going to try all the options. So that variable definitely resolves. I don't know if it'll let me run this. It's looking like there might be a, it just says, this is the error we got last time. It says that this is just completely invalid IML, I guess. That's the name of the markup language we're using here. Okay, and then the concat example. Let's try this one from Daddy. All right. Oh, and that has a typo in it also. So, oh, one, I think it was a capital F. Maybe that's also saying it's invalid IML. So we've got like the most interesting problem here in that we're trying to dynamically select a value from one output. I still have a couple options that come to mind. I still have a couple of options that come to mind. But actually, I'll just jump back over and see what else there was a couple other things that. Yeah, so this is the JSON structure. So this is sort of the direction I was going in. 3.output, then we can use map. And I think that's probably the right way to do this. So let's go back in here, delete this module. We'll set up JSON, we'll parse JSON, And what we're going to do is exactly that. So let me get zoomed in here. Our structure is going to look like this. Okay, so that's where the output came from. That was confusing for a minute. So because, so now we can put Edmonton here, and then we can grab that value from number 1. Let's see, or sorry, the search records. Right, the stock. There's the Edmonton stock there. And then Calgary here. Okay, this should work because it's giving us one more layer deep. Now when we run this, we've actually got something in the last module to reference. Should have probably started here. But it was an interesting problem nonetheless. So now when this runs, now we have an output key that we can reference. Now we can actually grab this value. Okay, that makes sense. So this is going to be, now we can just set a variable, set variable. This one's going to be called available. This is going to be available stock, right? Available stock. And then the value, this is where we're going to use map. Yeah, that makes sense. It's not going to be 3.output though. It's going to have to be this one. So then with luck, just have to change that. Choose where to start. All. Okay. So we got an error here. It says failed to map value function finished with object is not a valid array. I probably, let me see, from warehouse. Oh, the key to reference. Oh, of course. The key to reference is, wait a minute. Yeah. That doesn't make sense. That actually needs to be, let me go back here. Okay, output. Then this should be the from warehouse. What is the second key here in our map function? Go away. So complex array, key for filtering. I don't think we need the second one. I think we just need the first one. Zoom out. Run this again. If you've hung along this, if you've hung out this long, we're almost there. Failed to map value, finished with an, it still came out with an object. Let me double check my JSON here. Output is Edmonton, Calgary, that's fine. What does the actual output bundle look like? No, that looks correct. Okay, that's interesting. And then our map function says that, so we add our, oh, it says it wants a complex array, and we're not actually, but map should still work on an object though, shouldn't it? Is that's the error we're probably getting though. It's saying that, how did ChatGPT structure this? Yeah, see, it did that the same way. It should work on an object, so that shouldn't be the issue. So we add our object in, and then the key, and then we're not really doing any filtering, I don't think. We should be able to just say we want to extract the Edmonton value from the output. That should just work. Let me run this again and just let me go check that error. Let's see. So, and it is complaining the object is not a valid array, so that's fine. That's funny. See, I thought map worked with, what functions are available to us here? So these are text functions, math, date and time, working with arrays. Yeah, and map would be the one. No, Those are system variables. All right, let's ask our AI assistant here. ChatGPT for the win. Terrence says, you didn't try the nested functions. Would remove the need for abstracting to JSON. You mean the nested functions within Airtable? Is that what you're talking about? I would be willing to try that. Yeah, I think the problem is as soon as we paste that in to the thing, it's going to try and turn that into a variable before it's evaluated. Let me just disconnect this here. So unlink. The problem is that make is just doing strange things. So if we do set variable, again, call that test, and we paste that in, then this is what it does, right? It's sort of turning this into a bunch of stuff. And I don't know if it evaluates it sort of like exactly as it is or not. I don't know what they're doing under the hood here. I'm just sort of making some assumptions. But we'll run it. We'll see what it does. I suspect it's choose where to start all. And then, yeah, same thing. It's sort of just didn't really evaluate. Just says, you know, concat not found or whatever, right? Failed to map value function concat not found. Oh, I see. That's a string operation, right? We're in the bowels of make.com right now. We're trying to figure out how we can dynamically use a value from one output to select a value from a second output. And we're sort of running into, I think everybody that's on the live just wants to see this get resolved at this point. We haven't even got into the supply chain problems. We're just very much into the depths of how do we just make this work with the tools. Now, this is one of the interesting barriers with using low-code tools, because if we were just programming, if we were just using a programming language, this is trivial. And that's one of the things that sort of becomes inverted when you start using low-code tools. We run into this all the time as like in the software industry, if we're using, even if you get into something like, I'm going to pick on, say, you know, like WordPress or Wix.com or some other tool that like solves a problem, but then makes it just unnecessarily difficult to do the what I would consider to be the simplest thing. Now, this is quite a simple thing. We're just trying to pluck a value out of one structure based on the value of another structure. And yeah, so just for whatever reason, we've been working on this for quite a bit because it's non-trivial in this particular tool, which isn't, you know, it's not the end of the world. All right, Taryn has another suggestion here. Let's try this one. So he's saying, turn everything into strings first. I think it's still complaining about concat. It's saying concat's not a thing. So there, that's what I pasted in. Your exact suggestion there. We'll try this one more time. Go back over to choose where to start, all, run once. Yeah, same error. It doesn't like it. Okay, so let's back up. Let's try a couple other things here. We're gonna try. I'm gonna pop open a brand new scenario here. Just 1 second. Pop open a new tab. Just get out of this one. I want to find out the right way to do this. We'll just create a new scenario. In this one, I am just going to recreate our, actually we want the JSON module. Everybody that's on board this afternoon, thanks for joining me. We're just sort of, we're just figuring stuff out. If you follow me at all, you know that most of what I do is an experiment. So we're going to try this again. We're going to say output, and that's going to be an object, and we're just going to have two outputs here. One is going to be A, is capital A, and then the second one, B, is capital B. We're just testing to see if we can get past the map function. We just want the map function to work. So now we want set variable, tools, set variable, and this is just test. And what we hoped we would be able to do is map from the, well, we know now that we can go, let me just run this module. That'll set our JSON. And then this is going to be test, and we're going to map the output from here. And we want to get the value A, and that's it. That's all I want to do. Do I need this to be in strings? Maybe that's it. If I run that, I get the same error. It says it doesn't like trying to map against an object. So this is, I took a screenshot of this because I thought, okay, well, every once in a while, ChatGPT gives you the wrong answer. We tried to use the map approach, and that might be it. So Abed says use to array. We'll try that next, but we're getting this error. We're navigating this together. Thanks for joining along. We're just, it's an adventure. Let ChatGPT. Daddy, would you elaborate on that a tiny bit? It's saying get. Sometimes ChatGPT just comes up with random stuff. Is there a get function in make.com? Again, this is news to me. I guess there is. Let's run that and see what happens. Now, and see, that just gave us object, object, and a. Oh, I see what you're saying. I think, Daddy, you're right. Should be object string for within the function itself. I'm just trying to get my my brain to understand why that is. So get returns the value path of an object or an array. To access nested objects, use dot notation. Oh, interesting. So this is absolutely the module I think we want. I don't think I need to put, I'm suspecting that the quotes don't need to be there. Okay, zoom out. Fix that. So let me run this again. Oh, just run the whole thing, I guess. So that's still giving us that. Yeah, dot notation to traverse JSON. So do I need dot A? Is that what we're looking at? Oh, sorry, you're right. Running in two different worlds here. You need to use a semicolon, not a comma. So that was empty. Let me go back and fix it because I think we're making progress. So if we go here, run that. No, it's still empty. So let me go double check my output from here. Is our JSON output is output, and then we have A is a capital A and B is a capital B. So then if we look at our other, so I should be trying to select is it because I have a space in there? That's probably what it is. Run it again. There we go. Okay, we're there. Holy cow. This is one of those well-earned moments. Abed says we can use output.a. I'm willing to try that. Can we just do output.a? Will that just work? I don't think that's it. I don't think that'll run, will it? No, it gives us object.a. That literally gives us this. But no, we get is the function. So we do need to have that semicolon in there. I had a space in there. That's why it wasn't working. So the reason this wasn't working is because there was a space there. So it was looking for a key called space A. Terrence says, I think I bet means without get. Yeah, I'll try it. Output.a. I'd be willing to try that. I don't know if it'll work. I'm skeptical, but it could work. .a. Is that what you meant? Yeah, it gives me the same thing, collection.a. So we have to use the get function. We have to use a function to operate on that. Get a. That's what we want. So now we can use this. This is Terrence says, what if you just clicked on the A token in the pop-up? The problem is that I don't know the name of the token. That's the problem. I don't know the name of this token. It could be A or it could be B. That's why we're struggling with this. Okay, let's go back to the original problem here. We'll go back to our other scenario. Pardon me, I have a bit of a sniffle still. Our problem is that when somebody puts in, so just zooming all the way back, I appreciate everybody that's come along this far for the ride because we're pretty deep down the rabbit hole. We've got 3 different types of coffee beans here in our fictional supply chain problem. And we've got 2 warehouses. We have an Edmonton warehouse and a Calgary warehouse. Somebody puts in a transfer request and they select the warehouse they want to transfer from. So we don't know. And they say the stock that they want to move is this particular coffee, but we don't know what's going to be in this column yet. So when we get into our scenario, what we're trying to accomplish here is that we're going to change the levels. We're going to decrement the levels from the one warehouse, and we're going to increment the levels in the other warehouse by that amount. But the thing we were trying to figure out first was, is there enough stock? We haven't even got that far. So we've got in the very first module, the thing that kicks this off is the transfer request. So all we know is from warehouse. So we're trying to use this Edmonton key. We don't know if it's Edmonton or Calgary. It could be anything. We're trying to figure out where's the stock coming from. And we're going to have to do it again with the 2 warehouse. We're going to have to do it with both. So we need to determine that dynamically. I think we can, based on using get now, I think we can skip this maybe. No, we can't. We still have to use the output. So I think what we're going to do is set up a JSON structure here that has all of our warehouses and it has all of our stock. I'm actually going to name this to stock levels just to be a bit more clear. And then what we'll do is we'll just go in here and we should be able to go get rid of this, get rid of some of these strings. Come on. There we go. And then from here, we should be able to go. It won't be output anymore. It'll be stock levels. I'll just put a fictional value in there and we'll rerun this one more time. Choose where to start. All. This is going to pull the latest record again. And now if we go in here, we should see now we can go get, and then we can select stock levels. And now we should be able to select the from warehouse. From warehouse. This is going to be called available stock. Let's run this. Man, if this works, we've been working on this one for a good 45 minutes, just trying to pluck that variable out of there. Let me choose where to start. All. And it should say, because it's Edmonton for Sierra, it should say 130. That should be the value we're looking at. So available stock, 130. There we go. we hard earned that that solution right there. Thank you everybody who's helped out trying to solve that particular problem. That's wow. That was something else right there. Okay, we can get rid of this other module. We don't need that anymore. So now what we need to do, we have available stock. Now what we want to do, I think, is set up a branch. We need to know, and actually, while we have available stock, this isn't actually 100% helpful yet. What we need to do is determine if available stock is greater than the amount that's been requested. So we can do that probably in here, or it might make sense just to add one more variable, because we might still use that available stock later on. It's hard to say, but I'll just set a variable. And then we can say sufficient have enough stock, yes or no. And then I think this is actually kind of cool. Let's see if I can zoom in here a little bit to make this easier to see. That seems okay. We're going to use some of these math operators here. So I think what we can do is say if, we need our variables again, if available stock, and then our operator is going to be, it's going to be mathematical, is equal to or greater than, that's this little green one right down here. These are all our math operators. So multiply, divide, modulo, which is like remainder, less than, greater than, so on and so forth. So if that's greater than the requested, I think we just called it count. If it's greater than or equal to count, close that. We're going to say true, otherwise false. Okay, let's run this again. We just tested every step of the way. Oh, let me get zoomed out there. Choose where to start. All, okay. Run once. So this should say true, so we have enough stock. And now from here we can set up a, now I would set up a router. Somebody asked me the other day, what are routers good for? This is exactly what the router is good for. So we're going to set up a filter. I'll just set a placeholder here for now, just for fun. Set variable, and then we'll set one here. They don't do anything yet. I just want them to stay. We're going to set up a filter from this router. This first route is going to be, let's just say sufficient or enough stock level. And then the condition here is that have enough stock, which is the variable we just set right here, is equal to the value true. And then I think we can set this to a fallback. I usually just set these as, yeah, we'll set this to the fallback. Say not enough stock. So this should only happen. The second route should only take place if that happens to be false. We could also set a filter in there and say, you know, if it's false or whatever. So we'll just set these as some test variables, and we'll just test this out to make sure that that's also going to work correctly. And the other thing I'm going to do is we're going to name this scenario. We should probably save it. So this is our supply chain. Let's see. Supply chain initiate transfer request. Probably give that a better name later because that's pretty vague still. But choose where to start, all, run it again. So we ended up on the true branch, which is exactly what we wanted. So we ended up on this top branch. So we know so far that that's working okay. I'll also go back in here and I'll set this down to 15. And we'll run it again just to double check that it takes the other branch. So choose where to start, all, run once, and it did. There's our other branch. So we know that works fine. So that's what we want. Set that back up. Okay, we're so close. We're so close. We have enough stock. Yeah, Taryn, you're right. Taryn says, I believe if you set the first module as a webhook and then you set a starting point on that, and you can have avoid having to choose all every time. I kind of go back and forth. depending on how annoyed I get with having to click it every time. It's fine. Though I imagine you're also getting annoyed watching me click that every time. This is a part of the process, right? And it's one of my grievances. Next week, we're going to have a look at N8N. And Terrence says it's painful to watch. I know, right? It's good feedback. I appreciate that. Next week, we're going to have a look at N8N. When I do the live next week, I go live on Fridays. I've been going. So anybody who's in the US, I'm also streaming live on YouTube. So make sure you tune in from YouTube next week if in case the whole ban goes through and everything, which it looks like it will. I think we're going to dive into N8N. I've been watching a lot of videos on that, and there's always been a few features in there that I thought looked super cool to dive into when it comes down to like doing retrieval augmented generation. Now I see they have like AI agent stuff. There's a lot of things that are kind of drawing me into N8N. One of the things I saw just in the last couple of days was the way they handle test data or testing out scenarios is very nice, and they also offer the ability to have multiple triggers, which is really quite nice. So then you can set up scenarios that have both options, and then choose which one of the data you want to run with on the subsequent nodes, which is really nice. So we'll tie into that next week. We'll dive a little bit. We'll pick some of the problems that we're again, we'll probably grab a community problem and we'll tie into it from there. We're getting super close on this, so let's keep going. So what we wanted to do was, our goal is that if we have a transfer request, we also want to make sure that the transfer request, the status is requested. So we'll come back to that in a minute. But then the other thing that we want to do is we want to, we've actually got two things. When the transfer request comes in, we're going to decrement that amount from the source, and we're going to change the status of the transfer request. Now, I know there's been some suggestions in the chat already, probably from folks who have experience in supply chain, recommending how to make this a little bit more like accurately reflect the real world. So I'm take my implementation with a grain of salt. We're mostly just sort of demonstrating how to get into the tooling, and then from there we could build this out to be a little bit more elaborate. So let's just get that working first, and then we'll come back and talk about that some more. So I think what I want to do here is, we know that when we get to this top branch, there is sufficient stock to make that transfer request. So what I'm going to do here is decrement the amount from this particular, there's going to be a couple operations. We have to do some math. So we're going to have to say, what is the new stock level? So let's do that right now. New stock level. And then the variable value is going to be another math operation. So let's go, let's see. The stock level that came in. So we'll say available stock, and then we need to do math, subtract, and then the request amount. All right, so close your eyes, Taryn. I'm going to run this one more time. All right. I'm going to say ouch every time I do that. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Every time I so the new stock amount at 110, so that math operation, we started out with 130, they've requested 20. So our new stock amount is going to be 110, and now what we need to do is reach back into make.com for that particular warehouse and set the value. This will be probably need another funky formula or something here. Let's have a look at that. So we'll go back into Airtable, and we're going to update a record. So there were two options there, right? One was update and one was upsert. Let me just double check that I grabbed the right one. Airtable, update a record. Yeah, okay. Daddy says business rule for deduction of stock based on the request. Yeah, in Airtable probably directly, right? And I think that's really interesting. If you could have, what would that look like in Airtable if you just had a record present in a particular row, that it would automatically decrement something in another table? I'm open to suggestions on how you might model that directly, or let me know if I missed the mark there. So I think it was this Airtable. No, let me try. I've got too many here. We're going to go through this whole thing again. Nope, not that one. This one. Nope, not that one. I got to go clean these up. Sorry to waste everybody's time and look at all my Airtable connections. We just went through this. Not that one. The last time I did this, it just did it automatically. Oh, come on. Of course it's doing that right now. All right, let's just redo the connection. It says my connection has failed, so I'll just fix it. Add the base. Coffee Pro, grant access. Now what I should have done, I'm actually going to, since we're here, I'm going to do an OAuth connection. We're going to call this Coffee Pro because I don't want to do this again. Our due diligence, I'll just authenticate here real quick. And then we don't have to do this again because that's twice now. Now we can just select the right table. There, Coffee Pro. Okay. Now, grab our database. We're going to update the stock levels. Oh, I see. It was describing what I was building. Okay, thank you. Sorry. It's always challenging streaming. I'm still very new to this whole thing, so I get a little bit overwhelmed sometimes with questions and different things. So we need to go back and update the record. The record ID is going to be, the record ID was came in on our second one because we did a search on the records based on the name of the coffee bean. So in this case, we did a search based on Sierra Solstice because that was the name of the coffee bean that was in the original request. So what we want to do is we have the record ID right here. That's going to be the record that we update. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set the, I think, can we build a map? Yeah, we're going to have to map this. No, not that one. Can we map this one? Record, smart links, show advanced settings. How do I do this as a map? This is the part that's going to need to be dynamic again. And what we might need to do is rebuild the stock levels. In order to accomplish this, we might need to rebuild the stock levels in a way that we can just set all of them at the same time. And I think this, and I wonder if, Daddy, this is some of the recommendations you were saying earlier about doing this in a way that instead of having the warehouses as columns, having them as rows, that might make things easier. And from a data modeling perspective, I'm looking at this now and thinking, yeah, no, you're right. That 100% makes sense because we're just updating the one record. It changes the complexity of the data that we're modeling. So we'll see if we can get through this with what we have. But yeah, I think you're right. Modeling it the other way would make sense in that when we did the query against the record this way, we would search for the identifier, the primary key, if you will, Sierra Solstice, but then the secondary key would be, Edmonton warehouse. Yeah, exactly. So in this particular case, I'll have to come back to that user and tell them like, you might want to rethink the way that you're modeling this. 100% makes sense. So have you modeled this out using these specific tools before then, Daddy? Or is it just like, have you modeled this in some other system? Yeah. Daniel says, what software you use to stream on TikTok? So I've got OBS running on my desktop. And then I get my stream key through Restream.io. And so with Restream, I'm still on the sort of free account, but you can stream up to two or three. I think I can go to 2 or 3 locations. There was a question about if TikTok goes away, what do you have? I do have a YouTube channel. You can find the link in my bio. I'm from Canada, so I don't have the same problem. But for my American friends, I am streaming live on YouTube right now. This is my first live stream on YouTube, simultaneously on TikTok. And it's kind of looking at options. I'm slowly making the move towards YouTube. I think it makes sense. YouTube's sort of still relevant. Interested if there's other platforms that people are using en masse or what that looks like. I'm not sure if it's Instagram or not the little red book, I don't think. Maybe I've seen Fanbase, and then there was another one out there, Lemonade. I don't know. There's a lot of programs out there right now. So Daddy says, nope, model this in MS Dynamics. Interesting. Interesting. So, well, this creates an interesting problem. We can definitely solve this where, what we do is rebuild an object. If I just unlink this, I'll just remove this for a moment. We can still kind of work with what we have, in which case we would need to probably jump through some hoops because we're going to need to rebuild another JSON object that has the new stock levels for all of the different things, but we still need to determine which object is the one that's been updated. I'm actually seriously surprised with the, let me just check one thing here. Airtable. I'm surprised, sort of. Coffee Pro. I'm surprised that they don't give us the ability to map the actual record. Oh, I just got my first comment on YouTube. So the other thing I find, the comment on YouTube is that TikTok's quality is much better. Very interesting. I don't know that that's something I have any control over at all. I am streaming at 60 frames, about 12.5 megabit. It should be, and I don't know if I can adjust that per, maybe that's a paid feature of Restream. I have no idea. But the other thing I've noticed is that the stream delay on YouTube is much higher. I think my stream delay is about 4 seconds on TikTok, and it's well over 10, 12 seconds on YouTube. Taryn, if you go to the link in my bio, my link to my YouTube channel is there. So usually with most features, you can click on this little map button here. So for instance, this particular value has yes or no. If we click on map, it shows us the raw value under the hood, and then we can put an actual value in there. I'm kind of surprised we can't do that with record. There should be a map. I would have expected to have a map function for the actual record itself so that we could build these up dynamically. So it says use column ID instead of the column name for mapping. This will enable persistency over the column name change. Oh, I see. So more mapping, which is really interesting. One of the hardest things to do in make.com, as we've learned, just trying to extract a value out of the JSON, is the mapping. The mapping is the hardest part when you've got to start using functions to extract values and build up JSON. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take Daddy's advice, and we're going to rebuild this table right now. Let's just rename this to old stock levels, because I think the number of hoops that we're going to have to jump through has reached a high enough level that I'm not convinced that we're going to get as far as I want to. I'm sure I just duplicated that table. What happened? Duplicate table. I don't want to duplicate the records. Let me just refresh this. There it is. Old stock levels copy. All right, we'll rename this. And so we have two keys now. This one is going to be warehouse. It's going to be enumerated, which means it's a list of things. And then but yeah, that should work. Single select. I need to add some, no, it's not numeric. Wait a minute, single select, why is it making these? Okay, yeah, that's not what I want. So we're gonna have Edmonton, Calgary, save. And then this is now just gonna be a number, it's just gonna be stock level. And just for fun, I'm going to fix this here. Keep them consistent. Bean type, warehouse. So, okay. This now becomes a different lookup problem, but let's see if we can rebuild it this way fairly quickly. So we said we'll duplicate this record. Let's see, duplicate record, and we'll change this to Calgary. Be nice if it just kept, oh, see, that's a, oh no, it doesn't seem to care that the primary field here is the same value in both, so that's fine. So warehouse Calgary, let's see, Edmonton was 120, I think, and then same as this one, we'll duplicate this record. So this creates, we're now sort of in trade-off land, right? Where the modeling that we're doing, this one I think we said doesn't matter, so we'll say 25, and this one's 250. And then Aura Bloom will duplicate this. The problem with this particular approach is now, in order to be able to put this interface in the hands of a user, for instance, if I wanted to say, we need to query a bunch of records in order to, I don't know what these numbers were, it doesn't matter, 15. Yeah, and 90. In order to query this, we can't present as nice of an interface to an end user with this, right? Like they sort of need a little bit of training to make sure that they're editing the right record, which is fine. But data modeling is always about trade-offs, right? What trade-offs are we making on the front end or on the back end so that we can, at the end of the day, especially if we're like in no-code solution land, we're probably already orienting towards a nicer user experience, or perhaps even orienting towards a simpler experience, or at least that's going to be the approach that I'm trying to take. Because again, with this one, with the different bean types, we sort of pick one bean, and we could take and build an interface from this old table, and there's just one record per, and we could provide something to a user where they could see this right away directly in Airtable. Right, but now this way, in order to do that, we have to pull, we basically have to set up a query for either each of the beans or each of the locations. And it gives us flexibility either way. I guess maybe there is, if all of a sudden we add a new warehouse, I guess it doesn't matter either way. I'll take your word for it. This is the best way to go, because if you've already modeled this out, then that makes sense to me. Let's see if we can make this workflow work with that now. Let's go back. We've got transfer request. This is going to stay the same. Our lookup, let's make sure we're using the right table now. We'll refresh our table list. Oh, we need to refresh that whole database. 1 second. Yeah, stock levels. And then we need to update our formula a little bit now. So let's tie into that, because we also need to match on the bean type, but now we also need to match on the warehouse. So this is going to change. Bean type is that. And then I'm just going to assume, can we just add an ampersand in there? Daddy says filter warehouse equals location for the interface and directly use JSON. Yep. You can replace the bean type and warehouse with a product key and a warehouse for an additional table. Yeah, that makes sense. Make them relationships, make them foreign key instead of just enumerated values. Yep. Keep it simple for today. I don't know if this is going to work. We're going to try it. So we got bean type, and then the other one we need is warehouse. This definitely makes the operation a little bit easier, because we can just go equals, and then I don't even think we need we can now just grab the from warehouse over here. We'll say, okay, I think it's going to, this JSON probably goes away. So let's just rip this out of there for now. And let's just unlink this. Oh, what are we doing here? We're setting the available stock. Let's actually unlink this one. And we'll just adjust available stock instead of doing all this math. Let's set that to a temporary value for now. Ouch. 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 That was for Taryn. All right, so our formula is bad. Yeah, I'm curious what that looks like. Great question. And let me ask. Well, first ask ChatGPT, then we'll ask Google. How do I do an AND operation in an Airtable formula? Oop, help if I spelled it right. Yeah, good call. Condition 1, condition 2. So let's try that. And just a comma between them. And we'll run that again. Ouch, ouch, ouch. No, it still has an issue with that. The formula for filtering records is invalid. So let's have a look. What did I do wrong here? I wonder if I don't need these parentheses around. Let me just double check here. Yeah, that's probably the case here. Too many parentheses. But I should expect any sort of self-respecting programming language or formula language to sort of just deal with parentheses without complaining too much. But being strict isn't a bad thing either. So we'll tinker with this, see where we get to. Nope, still doesn't like that. Same error. Error formula is bad. Let me just double check that I have. Worst case scenario, we can just bring this. Oh, you know what? I think we need single quotes around this too. That's going to make a difference because we needed that for the skew. So we probably need it around the. We're just sending a raw string in there. Choose where to start. Run that again. That looks better. All right, so that did work. It says there was nothing matching, so it looks like our warehouse value didn't come in. I must have a value mapped incorrectly in the input. I think because a bunch of things changed. So let's just double check. From warehouse, that field name, I changed the field name, didn't I? Yeah, there's no more spaces in there. So that's what that is. That field doesn't actually exist. It's this one, from warehouse with a capital W, no spaces. Let's run that one more time. And now this time we have oh, let's check that. There we go. So we found it. Okay. So this is definitely going to simplify things in terms of being able to update the record again later. This is, yeah, definitely a good approach. So let me see. The available stock, we should be able to just pull. We don't have to do any math anymore. We can just pull the stock level directly off the record. And then if we connect these together again, the have enough stock, we just need to, so available stock stays the same. That stays the same, so that's fine. So everything else should largely stay the same so far. But now when we go to do the update, what we can do is we already know all of the values, right? Because we're not trying to dynamically find the stock level value based on its name. All we need to do is just put the new stock level in there. The record ID is going to match this ID right here. Bean type doesn't change, but we might as well put it in, I guess. So the bean type is going to stay the same, and then the warehouse is going to stay the same. Oh, and it's interesting that it's letting us do map on the warehouse value now. Super interesting. So I fully expect, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. I'm going to run this once. Oh, nope. Let me see from now on. Yeah, let's go create a brand new record in this. So let's see, we have stock levels here. Let's do the same bean, the Sierra Solstice. We'll grab that. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll move 20 units from Edmonton to Calgary. But this isn't going to actually, it's only going to decrement the value because this transfer request is only going to operate on the non-fulfilled. So we'll just create a new record here. We'll move from Edmonton to Calgary. Again, we'll do 20 units. This one was by Aaron again. And it's requested, and that's the bean type. So now we're at 120 now. So we'll go ahead and run this once. It'll plinko through all the things. That looks like it worked. If I go back to Airtable now, this is at 100. So we've got 100, we've got 20 units caught up in this requested stock transfer. And so now, as Daddy mentioned earlier, we still have to deal with, in transit and things like that. And even requested, I would assume that requested wouldn't move anything. I would say probably we should adjust the value once it's been picked, like plucked and in transit, then the values change or something like that. But just for funsies, what we'll do is we'll set up one more scenario that is going to re-add the value to the target warehouse. Now, I know for a fact we're going to need another field on this because this scenario is triggered based off of the date created field. Has to be a date field. So in order for this to work, we're going to need an updated field. So every time this, let me see, what's in there for dates? Created by, created time. There's got to be some kind of date field. Let me see. Last modified time. We'll just call this updated. So we need this field because once this changes, once this is the field we'll watch on the second scenario. And then what we'll be watching for is for the status of that request to go to fulfilled. So I'm just going to duplicate this scenario because we don't really have a ton of stuff to do. Now, what I would probably do in here is like, you could have a router. Yeah, Taryn, we talked about that before. And actually, instead of having a status change, each of these should be, I would, if I was doing this for my own stuff, I would have this so that this field didn't change at all. Each one just became its own record. So like if it came in, like if you moved it from, the way I would want to do this is to have like a board of some kind where if you move this order from, in transit to fulfilled, it would create the log entry that you're talking about. Who moved it? What was the time? Whatever the order comes in, and now it's now these are not immutable values; they stay the same, and then you have a record of whenever those things change. That's probably the right way to do this. Then you have a clear log of every change in that particular order, and I don't think from here that would be that hard to do, because you could just have another. So this is the transfer request, which had the status of the order currently, but then have another log table that triggers these scenarios. That'd probably be the right way to do this. And you get kind of the best of both worlds. You can have this transfer request table where you could manage it with like maybe a Kanban board or something, or whatever that, forms, buttons, something to move those things around. But then you have that nice history where you're not losing data. The problem with this is, at the end of the day, we can see when this was created and when we can see it was updated, but we have no record of when it moved from requested to in transit. We have no record of when it goes from in transit to fulfilled. Yeah, so we're going to want something a little bit more robust. And I don't think that's going to be a big leap from where we are right now. Again, we're just sort of prototyping. We're testing it out. We spent 45 minutes just trying to figure out how to pull a value dynamically out of make.com variable output bundle, which is, it was time well spent. Definitely bumped up I'll never forget that one. Hard earned or hard won, I guess you could say, which is how it goes sometimes. Taryn, how many times in your career have you sunk hours or even days maybe into a really hard won, problem, hard won solution? More than once, I'm sure. That's just how it goes sometimes. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this scenario. Let me see. Supply chain, initiate transfer. So I'm going to just rename this just so it makes more sense. Supply chain demo. And we're going to say decrement source stock source warehouse. Let's keep track of our scenarios. Taryn says, ha ha ha, countless. Yeah, I think Daddy says, yeah, weeks. Recreating regular expressions with string methods. No thanks. Both of those sound horrible. Regular expressions are the worst. You know, I have a whole story about regular expressions. Because I don't have any formal training as a software engineer, even though I've been in this industry forever. There was always this next bar. Oh, if you use Linux, you're not a real developer unless you use Vim. You're not a real developer unless you use this. And regular expressions has always been sort of dangling there as this carrot, like, oh, you're not a real developer unless you use regular expressions. You know what? I still hate regulars. I know people who are really good at them, and I hate them. I'm just like, ChatGPT, how do you do this? I'm perfectly happy to just have ChatGPT write my regular expressions. So I'm going to clone this supply chain demo, and then we're going to increment the target warehouse stock. So we won't worry about the states or any of that kind of stuff. We'll just jump into this one, and we're basically going to do the same thing. Transfer request, but this time the trigger field is not going to be the date. It's going to be updated, and we're going to have a completely different we can actually, now that we know how these filters work, we can actually probably put a filter in here. Airtable to filter records. The formula will be evaluated for each record. I think this should work if I say just, what's that field called? Status? Yeah, status equals, I think I need to, oh no, I need to go like this. Equals. We'll just test this out. I don't know if this is going to work. We'll find out in a minute. That'll give us some, oh, I need to zoom out. Fix that. So what I want to do is, I'm going to break this. I'm going to unlink this right here because these operations need some adjustment. Let's make some adjustments here. So this is going to go in. It's going to pull something based on updated, hopefully status equals fulfilled. We'll try that in a minute. And then, let me see, then we're doing a query based on bean type equals, yeah, that's right. And the from warehouse, that should still be the same. That should all still be the same. The thing I'm realizing is that also we don't have a way to, what this is going to happen is, once this has been processed, we need to have another order type to distinguish, or another status type to distinguish records that need to come into this and be processed as fulfilled records. But then if they stay as fulfilled, then they'll just try to be processed again. We wouldn't want that. We wouldn't want this to run twice. So it's almost like we need another type. It's fulfilled, or maybe it's like pending fulfilled. And how would you handle that, Daddy? Do you have something in place to distinguish between something that, for me, I would just right now, I'll just add another status type that says finalized or closed. Maybe that's the way to do. Fulfilled is going to trigger this workflow, And once the workflow is done, it'll just have a closed status or something like that. Let me just add that option right now. This is probably a naive approach, but I'll just do it this way for now, just so we can wrap up what we're trying to do. Terrence says, what about using a single table as a queue? Records are removed when completed. That would be another great way to run that too, right? A task queue. Yeah, that makes sense. Daddy says, no pending. Pending unless it is very slow or approval is needed. Yeah, okay. I do like the idea of a queue. I mean, that's sort of like, because you have a bunch of stuff comes in at the same time. It's not like you're just shipping one item around, or you just have like, if you're moving stock between two warehouses, it's not just like, here's, one box of stuff. It's probably like a fair bit of stuff. So when it comes in, you're going to have a bit of a queue that's going to sit there, and it all needs to be processed one at a time. So maybe the status might be pending fulfillment or something like that. I'll leave it like this for now. Again, this is semi-fictional. This our fulfilled our let's see, requested in transit. I should just change this to we can just say pending. Pending fulfillment, confirm change. And then we can change this also. These names would probably need to reflect more clearly. Let's run that and see if we get a record out of there. Whoops. Choose where to start. Yeah, this isn't pulling anything, so I don't think this is actually going to work. So Daddy says, the problem is you're using an async through a microservice. The trigger has already been sent. Could have a service bus. I think because this is on a schedule, I don't think the Airtable query is like instant. I don't think it happens instantly because it's asking me already, what interval is this going to? So every 15 minutes, it's going to pull down records and do a bunch of processing, right? So it shouldn't be an issue. Yeah, it should be fine. Would require some testing. This filter doesn't seem to be working, which is fine. We can just add a filter in here that once that record comes in, we'll just run this one more time. Choose where to start. Which is disappointing because actually, let me try that one more time because I kind of want that to work. Status equals pending. That should work. Choose where to start. And yeah, that yielded 0 results because we're only going to want this to pull in records. So I'm going to have to change one of these to pending. That's why. Let's try that. We're figuring this out live. There we go. Now we have an output bundle. Okay, so that works. Our formula worked that way. And then I think the second module still makes sense because we're still going to query that same. No, we need to change this to the to warehouse this time. Warehouse equals the to warehouse. That's fine. Our math operation is going to change because we're not going to subtract. Our available stock is that. I don't think we need this branch anymore because we don't need to calculate Though I suppose can a warehouse have too much stock? Probably. Not going to worry about that problem today. I'm just going to remove this module. And then the router probably, again, doesn't make sense because we're just incrementing. I'm just going to remove this just to keep it simple. Daddy says, I always try to minimize the amount of statuses before you have 5 different types of pending. That 100% makes sense. Only if you understand how to differentiate. It's one of those things. I ran into this problem again, actually recently too, with whenever you're building out like a Kanban, but this is effectively a Kanban board problem, where you have different types of stock, the different types of statuses in your workflow, and it's like trying to delineate between all of those different types. Okay, if it enters this type and it needs approval, does this mean you're waiting for approval? And then there's like been sent, like waiting for approval. Does that mean the person's been notified? Like, do you need to sort of break that out into their own statuses too? It can turn into sort of a bit of a rabbit hole in terms of really nailing down what a particular thing being in a status or a column means is super important. So yeah, I think you're 100% on the nail there. In the same way, I try to simplify all my workflows as much as possible. Same kind of thing. So Terrence says, yeah, no doubt that's where the transaction join table can come in. Depends on the functions, just for the user display, or is it needed? Is it just for the user display, or is it needed for backend processes? Yeah, and I think there's a balance there because, so again, this was a community problem. This came up today. And on one hand, there's sort of the back-end processes where things need to be automated. But right now, there's different users involved at different locations, right? So potentially, there's going to be different people that need to click the buttons or move the boxes around, in different parts of the process. So there might be a balance in there, and I can't say what it is until we were actually in the weeds and sort of figuring that out. I think I'm always going to lean a bit towards clamping down the back-end processes as much as possible so things can't sort of go off the rails, and try and find a nice user experience in there somewhere. That's always the hard part, right? I say that as a nice mix of words, but like that's always the challenge, isn't it? Is sort of finding a balance between those two things. We must have very serious constraints in the back end because we want to minimize the amount of nonsense or chaos that can happen. But if we get sort of too complicated or technical and have all of this stuff, then it gets really hard to interface with other teams. If there's lots of rules or it's just difficult to do things, right? Can we find a balance in there somewhere? All right, so we're getting super close. So I don't think we need available stock anymore. Oh yeah, available stock. We probably don't need this. I'm gonna get rid of that module. Excuse me. I'm at the tail. I'm in the last 4 weeks period of my cold. When you're sick for 3 days and then you spend the next month just in the last little bit of it. I think our new stock level, we're just a very simple math operation here. We're just going to be able to say, okay, our old stock level, let me see. Let me run this. I'm actually going to unlink this. Unlink. I just want to run this once. Just make sure I have fresh data. All right, so in this particular record, oh, sorry, let me look at my output bundles. This was the status change to pending. So we're interested in the to warehouse and by how much. So in this one, zoom out. This one, we're querying the stock levels table. We're looking for the to warehouse. And so if this went correctly, yes, then that's Calgary. And the current stock level is 35. So then what we're going to do here is say the new stock level is going to be our current stock level math operation. We're going to add, and then we're going to go back and add in that count. And then from there, we're going to update our stock levels. This time we're going to, let's see, the record is off of this one, that one there, bean type, new stock level. That should work. That should be exactly what we're looking for. I could do the compose directly in the update for sure. I tend to do this. I tend to have these variables set just so I can test it out. I could break this link. I could unlink these and just test it out and sort of see that as a debugging value. I'll end up maybe with more nodes than I need in that way. So once that's updated, then the other thing that we need to do is we need to do one more update on the Airtable. And we're going to update a record. It's going to be the transfer requests. The record ID is going to be our very first record because that was the transfer request that came in. From warehouse is going to stay the same. To warehouse is going to stay the same. Count is going to stay the same. I don't even know if we need to add these values requested by. I'll just add them in because that just makes sense. The status is what's going to be different. SKU, the SKU I'm going to leave the same. And the status, what was our, was it completed? Oh, I forget. Fulfilled. Our status is fulfilled. So we're going to update this. So that's our second workflow. Is when something comes in as pending, it's going to adjust the status. So in this particular case, we have the second request to go from the Edmonton warehouse to the Calgary warehouse. It's 20. So this should end up being fulfilled, and then we should see our, let's see, our Calgary warehouse for this should go up to 55 because we've already plucked 20 out of here in theory. So this should go up to 55. So we'll run this one more time, see what happens. Choose where to start. Oh, there's a whole bunch of issues in there. Oh, I've got a bunch of broken references. Let's go double check. Let's go see where we've got broken reference because we duplicated this and then I deleted a bunch of modules. So I might have to rebuild some of these because it's, yeah, it's complaining. That's fine. Oh, a rejected status. Yeah, that makes sense. And there's more scenarios in here. So Daddy says you need a rejected status for the else. Definitely. Because that would be another scenario potentially, right? Whereas if there was a transfer request that came in, but then yeah, you said no, we're not going to for whatever reason, then you would put those stock back. Yeah, Josh, this is exactly your problem. So I plucked this out of your thing today as sort of like, let's see if we can build this out. What does that look like? We originally started to do it a little bit in Airtable. One of the things that came in, so Josh is here. We've been working on Josh's problem today. Josh was the person I had a conversation with earlier today about how do you approach this. And so I thought that'd be interesting to do on the live today. Let's see if we can build this out. One of the things that came out of this today, there's actually quite a bit of stuff here. Josh, I'll sit to be a recording afterwards. I can share that with you. So, but two of the things that came out is one, the structure. So one of the folks on the live here, Daddy, was saying they have a similar implementation in another system, and they recommended modifying the data structure of the stock levels. So the stock levels you're working with, where you have sort of like the SKU over here, and then warehouse, warehouse, warehouse. It becomes difficult to work with. And we ran into that on the live trying to update things and whatever. And so the recommended structure was more like this, where you've got, you're duplicating your SKUs over here, but then you've got a record for every warehouse. It just became a lot easier to query. That was one of the things that came in. Querying and updating the records individually became very, very simple. In this scenario, updating these keys dynamically based on values in the scenario got very difficult. One of the other things that came out of this that's been mentioned a couple times is that this transfer requests should actually probably be two tables. One is the transfer request itself, but then another table which is actually the log, so that we have a record over time when it changed to this status, when it changed the next status, when it was rejected, when it was approved, and then sort of the request table would reflect that, but the scenarios or those automations are actually being triggered off the log table. So there'd be a couple little automations that need to be in there to make that happen, but lots of great feedback on the live. Yeah. Let me see if I can fix these. Let me see if I can fix these real quick. So one SKU, I'm looking in here. Let me just try and run this again. Give me a whole bunch of errors at the same time. So initialization failed with an error, and it says can't invalid reference filtering 00 on the enough stock level. Have enough stock. It's almost like it's referencing modules that we deleted already. New stock level is there. New stock level is there. I don't see any other references to that old module. So it almost feels like a make.com bug or something. Is there a... No, that seems fine. Let's see if we can run it up to here. We'll unlink that. Run once. Nope, it is just having an issue here. Open log. Cannot initialize this error because the reason scenario validation failed. One problem found. Invalid reference in filter. Oh, there's a filter. Oh, I see. I've got a filter in there that's referencing something. That makes sense. That's this here. So I'm going to get rid of this filter. Yes, that's my issue there. Okay. Click enough things and it'll come about. I'm just going to unlink that. Nope, that didn't get rid of my filter. I think I just have to clear this out. X. There we go. Just clean it right out. There should be like a one-click thing for that. Remove filter. Why was that so difficult? Okay. Clean it up, save, run it again. So this should move our stock level now. And if we look at our stock levels, sure enough, there's 55. So again, not overly, still overly simplistic, probably. And I think what we arrived at was we sort of started looking at automations directly in Airtable. I think we arrived right away at, and again, maybe with the new structure, we might be able to model this in terms of the find records, update records. We might be able to do a lot of these automations. So Daddy says, adding the transit stock table will allow you to park the object until it arrives, and then you can write. And I think with the simplified structure, we might be able to get away with automations more directly in Airtable as opposed to breaking out into make.com. Again, the other thing that's going to be a little bit annoying here is that we've got now a couple of different scenarios. We'll discard those changes because I don't want them. So right, we're going to have several different scenarios operating on this one Airtable, this Airtable base. And that's not super great because they're sort of, we need to keep track of them. We need to get back in the headspace of, oh, what does this do again? You know, when there's different failures, we sort of like, if you get busy, you start working on something else, something goes wrong, you get a Slack notification, you come in, you're like, oh yeah, what does this do again? Like it's a real thing. So I would still probably lean towards trying to see how much of that I could get away with directly in Airtable. And like Daddy suggests, if we design the data structure properly, we can probably keep the automations fairly simple. Again, maybe we'll take a minute. We can probably just mock out. I'm going to get rid of this old table. Let's see here. Delete that. Transfer requests. Because the way I would want to build this out, right, is not having my users interface with this. So this is our transfer request table. That's fine. I would have another table that's probably a duplicate of this called transfer request logs. And this is what's going to kick off the scenario. And so let me just clear these out. We'll get rid of these. And then we can probably go in and build out an automation in here. Let me just delete this group. Oh yeah, you can still see that. Okay. So when a record is created, oh, I need to, one sec, switch my view again. Can't see the whole thing just because we're in vertical format today. So I've got to bring that over a bit. That looks okay. So when a record is created in transfer requests, we'll just use whatever they suggest. Then what we'll do, let me see. Let's go back real quick. Just create an example record. Transfer requests, ID can be number 1 from warehouse Edmonton to warehouse Calgary. Count's going to be 5. Oh, our scenarios are off, so it doesn't matter. Let's say this is going to be me. Status is requested. The SKU will just say Velvet Ember because we haven't played with that one at all. And I think that's everything we need. Yeah, that should be good. Okay. That should give us a record to play with in the automations. So let's try and see how far we can get with this. Yeah, thanks for stopping in, Daddy. Appreciate it. Daddy says, I think we have 90% down from a technical perspective. Yeah, awesome. I appreciate all your inputs. This is going to save, hopefully save Josh some time or headaches or both. So we're just going to use the record that they say we should use. That's fine. And then the next step, we can say we're going to create a record. So when a record is created in the transfer requests, we're going to create, enter a log of that in the table, transfer request logs. And then I think we can choose the fields from warehouse. I think we want to, let me see if I can, unfortunately, there we go. We need to kind of map these. I think we're going to make this dynamic. So we're going to have to do each of these dynamically. So for each of the records in when we're creating a log entry for each of these, what's going to happen is whenever any of these transfer request entries come in here, we're going to create a carbon copy in this other table right here. So we're going to have to manually transfer all of those records over. So there's going to be a little bit of tinkering here, but it should be fine. It'll just take us a minute. So we'll start with the first one from warehouse. We're going to have to add all of the fields in here dynamically. So we've selected the target table, transfer request logs, and then we need to add all of these fields in. From warehouse, we need to click on this dynamic thing. And then there we get this little plus, and then we can say, let me see, insert value from the field from warehouse. Then we'll add another field to warehouse. Hey, Taryn, thanks for stopping in. I'll be done. We're actually going to go for maybe 15, 20 more minutes, and then I'll give you a ping. We'll have a late night tea and a chat. It's good to see you. So to warehouse is going to be dynamic. We're going to pick the same thing from the original record to warehouse. Choose the next field, requested by. We're going to basically do this for all of them. Requested by. Apologies, I'm on the tail end of my cold here. Still kind of in sniffle mode. The count, we'll copy that over. That's going to be dynamic. And so we're just basically going to move all of these over so we get a record. But the cool thing about this is status. This is going to have a fixed, it's going to have a fixed status. This isn't going to be dynamic. Let me go back. So let me put status in there again. Status is going to be requested. So this is only going to, so when a new record is created, Raul, I'll get to your question in a second. When a new record is created in this transfer requests, we're going to create the requested log. So we're going to sort of control how this works. It's going to be a little bit more controlled this way. This record's never going to change. And then the skew, we'll add that dynamically. That's going to be the skew from the original one. That's all of our fields. So then, I don't know, generate a preview? Sure. And that's it. That's all we need to do. So that handles one. So this is the preview. It's going to create, these are computed fields, but it's going to create a record in our from warehouse to warehouse, so on and so forth. That all looks good. And then what we can do is turn that automation on. So now, this is the power of Airtable right here. Let's get back over to the side here. Go back to our data. So now when we create a transfer, I'm just going to delete this record. We'll create a new one. From warehouse. You know what's going to happen? I bet it's already created an empty record. It did. See that? So we want to, how are we going to handle that? Let's go back into our automations. We created the record. Actually, this is the way I'm going to do that. I'm not going to manually create these. Let me get rid of this, because I'm not actually going to have people create these records. The way I'm going to do this is through a form. Okay. We're going to build a new form. Sorry, let me get back there. I need to stretch my screen out again. That's the one, yeah. Create a new form. It's going to be a transfer request, okay? And that's going to be the form name. I'm going to create that. This is the power of Airtable now, is that we can give this form to somebody to fill out a transfer request. So it's not going to create that record. You can specify who gets to fill out the form. I'll just say everyone on the web, make a password, whatever you want to do. If you start adding people to your Airbase, you start paying for those extra seats. But if we just copy this link and paste it in here, let's go back and have a quick look at our table. Let's go back to our data here. So our transfer request is empty and our transfer request logs is empty. And if we go back to our form, okay, now we can say from warehouse Edmonton to warehouse Calgary, count is going to be 20, requested by, this is me, I might be logged in. Status, this we can specify so they can't change this status. This is actually needs to be enumerated, but I'll just borrow the value from the stock. We'll pretend that these are a drop down. Enumerated just means a list, you pick one. Drop that in there. So now when we submit this transfer request, okay, thank you for submitting your request. If we go back in there, we see the transfer request has been created, and we'll also see that the log has been created. Now, the reason this is cool is because I would create another form or an interface. Build an interface. I don't care what it looks like right now. I need to make this a bit bigger. There we go. A Kanban board. That's what I want. Kanban board just lets us visualize our workflows. So if I shrink this down, and right now it's sorting based on, let me see, it's sorting based on, this isn't even the table that I want. We're going to adjust this. Let me adjust this and then I'll talk about it. Let me see, I'll make this a bit bigger. Bear with me, this will make sense in a second. So we don't want to see stock levels. This is not what we're interested in. What we want to do is click on this and we want to adjust the stacking field. Let me see. It's not showing the table that I want. What I want is the table for, one second here, pages. Let me get rid of this. No, interface, add a page. I think I selected the wrong option. Next, Kanban board. Oh, that's why. Um, so the table, I don't want stock levels. I want transfer requests. Transfer requests is what we're going to um, show to our users. We're going to give them the form or whatever. We're going to manage it that way. And the field we're going to do to differentiate between the transfer requests is the status field. Okay, so we get this really nice board, and this is what this board looks like. Is we end up with, we'll just collapse the uncategorized. This one here, we can just go, we'll click on this and we'll say, we can pick on which fields we want to show off. So if I go, there's a thing in here that says fields, sorry, 1 second, filter by stacking field is status, sort by is none, that's fine. Hide empty stacks. Hey, Noah. And then I'm blanking on how we can hide. We don't want sort of uncategorized. We have requested. And we have in transit. We can have this nice board where people can drag the records back and forth. I'll show that in a second. So we don't need an image field. We want to show the from warehouse. We want to show the to warehouse. We want to show the count. We want to show requested by, and we might as well show SKU, and we'll show the date. That's good enough. So this is the whole record. So as far as the fields that are available, we can shut some of those off. Let me see. Every time I get in here, I have to relearn how to do this. Show description, no. Visualization, Kanban, that's fine. That's fine. Sort, search, filter, group. I don't know if we need those. You can sort of turn things on and off. Sources, transfer requests, that's fine. There's a button in here. The thing I'm trying to do is there's actually 4 statuses. We have requested, in transit. If we go back to our data source here, go back to our data in our status. Sucks to have to move the browser around. I actually have 4 types: requested, in transit, fulfilled, and pending. Again, these are gonna change depending on what your process looks like, right? So our 4 statuses here: requested, somebody, that's the default status. In transit means it's being shipped. Pending is sort of like it's not quite, it's arrived, but it's not finalized, and then fulfilled is like it's done. Yeah, I should have announced on the Discord that I was live. I will do that. I'm getting better. I sort of just jumped on because I was running a bit behind. So what we want to do is if we jump back, sorry, I'm jumping around here. If we jump back over to our board, our interface, what we want to do is present the user. And actually they're there now that I see it. If we look here, can I just publish this? Yeah, let's publish. Man. Airtable does not like, so we can see all of these statuses are here. They don't look super great on a vertical screen, but I basically got requested, in transit, fulfilled, and pending. I'm going to change the order, but what this will allow you to do now is we can make it so that editors can change this, and you could drag, let me see if I can fix that now. You can drag that card from one status to the next. And that could kick off another automation. Just give me a second here. I'll see if I can figure this out. So there's a permission in here somewhere. Let's see. Allow users to export data. Show descriptions, filter by source title. Edit records in line. Click into record details. I don't know if that's necessary. What that's going to look like is kind of like it'll pop up this little card. You can see it there. So if they click on it, if they click on a record, now we have the ability to drag a record around. This is exactly what I'm looking for. So I might shut the date off. I don't know if we need that. But you could use it requested by, from and to. The ID maybe we don't need. It's hard to say. And then the only other thing I want to do is, oh yeah, collapse that field. So now publish this. That's fine. So now this is what our board looks like. So we've now got a form. If I make that smaller, it still kind of looks like. Collapse that. So now let's go back to our form here. 1 second. I'll pop the form out in another field. We'll make another transfer request. We'll go back to our published. So we'll pretend we have our workflow here, okay? So now let's go have a look at our form. Share form. I'll just grab that link again. Not embed. Come on, Aaron. Click the right thing. Copy link. Okay. So there's our form again. So again, from warehouse, this time from Calgary to Edmonton. The count is going to be 35, requested by Aaron. We should set that as read only. We could do that. And then again, the SKU. I'll pick another type of coffee here. Let's go back to our Coffee Pro. Aurora Bloom. This is what we're going to do this time. So now we're in here. Whoops, bear with me. Here we go. This one. Now, come on. So now when I submit this, this is the interface I'm giving to my users so they can submit the request. And then when we come in and have a look, now we've got 2 requests on the board. Okay. And the cool thing about this is if we go back into our base and have a look at the data, we've got 2 requests in the transfer requests, and then we've got logs. Now, what I would do from here, and what was suggested earlier on the live, is that you have this nice interface. So if you have somebody who's processing those requests, okay, and say that they picked this order for 20 or whatever, right? They can drag it here. That transition would have an automation that would create a record in the log table and could kick off another automation. That would be the process here. That would be the goal, is that you can just the simple fact of moving this from one row to another based on the process. So at any given time you can see how much stuff you have at any part in the process. You have different queues for each part. And then the transition, the actual creation of the logs, let's just do that right now. Let's go create that automation right now. So we got one automation here. Let's rename it so that it makes sense. How do we rename this? Bear with me. Rename. So this is going to be create transfer request log, and the status is going to be requested, just to keep it clean. Let's create another automation. Where's the create automation? Way down at the bottom. Okay, so we'll create another one here. This is going to be create transfer request log, and this is going to be in transit. And so the trigger is going to be when a record matches the condition. Bump that up a little bit. Select the table, transfer requests, add a condition when status is in transit. And then I don't think we have a record in there right now, so let me just go. Oh yeah, there might be. Did we move one over? Did we leave it there? I don't remember. Let's go have a look. Right there. That one's in transit. And then we'll just use the suggested record. That'll give us something to play with. So now we have a record. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a record again. We're going to do the exact same thing we did last time. Create in transit log. And the reason I would do it this way, so action will run, it's going to be the transfer request, and then choose fields from warehouse. We're going to go through this exact same process. That's going to be dynamic, and we're going to get it from the original record. From warehouse to warehouse so on and so forth. And the reason you would do it that way, or might want to do it that way, is that you've got two tables. You're going to set up a rule for this for each one of your statuses, because there's 4 different, in our case, we have 4 different statuses, right? We've got the status requested, that's the initial status. In transit, that's when somebody moves, whatever mechanism they use to go from requested to in transit. Maybe they drag it like this or whatever. Whatever, could be an automation, could be a button on a website, could be whatever it is. The transfer request keeps the current status, so you have a human-facing view of where all of your parts and pieces are. But behind the scenes, any external automations are based off of these logs, because as soon as you create this log, we can just finish this up right now. All of you that are still here, I imagine you're not. You've been here. We've been here this long. I imagine you're not running off yet. So we'll finish this up. We'll create all of these. So from warehouse, requested by, okay, to warehouse. Nope, it's going to be dynamic. It's from that original record to warehouse. The count. So we're going to duplicate this every time. We're going to have a complete copy every time, because that's going to give us a lot of flexibility. The status is going to be fixed. This time it is going to be in transit, so it's immutable. And SKU, again, that's a dynamic value, and we're going to pull that off of the original. And we'll come back. We'll enable this. And now if we go back to our original interface, go into our data, and if we have a look at our logs, we have 2 transfer requests. One's in transit. Let me actually move this back to requested, because that's where they were. We would want all of our records to be consistent in where they were at. So if I refresh this, everything is here. So let's pretend now we're going to send some stuff in status. We're in transit. We're going to pick these 20, and we're going to send them from Edmonton to Calgary and change the status. So simply by virtue of dragging from here to here, now, as I go through my day, or again, this could be a drop down, or it could be whatever, then this record maintains the current value. But in my transfer request logs, I now see that there's a second record of that one order number, right? Now, these transfer requests should actually, there's a field where I just realized we're missing here. We're missing a field here, which is actually the ID of the transfer request. So if we go back in, we'll actually add that in right now. We'll call it transfer request ID, and it'll just be probably a number is fine. Let's make it a text field. We could even link to another record, so it could actually link back to the product. I might not do that because it's going to create a related field and it'll end up being kind of bloated. So I'll just call it a single line of text. So let's see. 2 transfer requests. One is requested and one is in transit. So we definitely know that this one's going to be a 7. This one's probably a 7. And this one's probably an 8. Something like that, just to keep track. They probably should be linked, but it's not the end of the world if they're not. So now we have a log. So if I wanted to go and be like, oh, okay, find all of the logs of this transfer request, where's that at? I can go into this table, or provide an interface where somebody can be like, all right, put in your transfer request ID, right? And we can filter, add a condition where the transfer request ID is 7. We can go and find the status of those. Oh, we've only got 2. How come it's not fulfilled, right? We can keep track. We see a log when they were updated, or sorry, when those records were created. So the request was created at 5:07, and then it moved to in transit at 5:22. We have sort of an activity log over time, if that makes sense. Sorry, no, I did see your question. I wasn't ignoring you. this is actually Josh's problem. So we're managing stock levels between warehouses and trying to automate some of that process. We had some folks on the live earlier that had some suggestions about how to model the data, so it might make sense for us. We ran into some really wacky problems trying to get some real technical problems in make.com, just trying to like dynamically populate values and stuff is pretty fun. But now we're at the place where we're sort of fleshing out the remainder of these the remainder of these sort of angles of the problem, if you will. And I really like the notion of providing nice interfaces or forms. So back to this interface, if we go into edit pages, this particular one here doesn't need to be there. So transfer requests, that's the page we're working on. I'm going to get rid of the stock levels. Delete that. So you can actually build and publish a nice interface in, again, some of the power of Airtable. I want to create a form for our users. And again, here's the transfer requests. Hit next. And let's see. I don't want to give them status, so I'll shut that off. From warehouse to warehouse, count, requested by, and the SKU. Again, the SKU probably needs to be a drop-down, or they might just need to enter that manually. New transfer request, that's fine. And then again, so once we publish this, right, we've got these two nice interfaces where this is one interface. When somebody's logged in, they have sort of the transfer request project board where we can see the status of all of these requests, right? This is the user interface I would present to my team. And then we have this, oh, I need to make a new transfer. So then we have a nice little from, to, how many, right? Who's requested? Josh. And then what's the product, right? What was it? Aurora something. We came up with these really ridiculous coffee bean names, right? So they can put the SQ in, and now boom, that creates a request. And if we go back to our other, now we see that's in there, right? So we end up with these nice workflow interfaces for our team, just sort of like just enough to get the logic working, the logic flowing. And so and then we can have automations around each of these stages. So even if you didn't automate this, even if you didn't have automations behind the scenes, you could still use this as a board. Like even if this wasn't connected to anything, you could still use this as like somebody submits a request and then that just sends an email. Hey, yo, there's a new request. You look at the board, you're like, oh, okay, there is a new request, right? They can have a look at that. Here's the details. And then you can manage them from here. Again, if that works. It creates a nice user experience where right now I know for a fact this is being managed like in spreadsheets, right? So then how do you put guardrails around some of those bits and pieces? So it might be one place to start. All right. Noah says, please continue. I love to see you guys learn. I'm not going to give the answers. We should have just asked you earlier. So many years of Microsoft Power BI and others. Yeah. So my experience tells me, so Noah says, starting on the user journey first, that's smart. I always start on the user journey because we don't develop software for ourselves as software engineers. I mean, we might if we have our side projects, but even in our side projects, we are the users, right? So if we're not modeling what the users are doing, then how are we adding value to the project? How are we adding value to the business? If we're not modeling what the users are doing, how are we improving things? So my experience as a software engineer tells me that we must understand what the user wants. We must understand the problem the user is trying to solve. And then if we are able to get to a place where we can implement something intuitive and simple, that's going to go a long ways. Because people it will be more accessible. Or if we can make it accessible, right, then that's going to add a lot more value. We need to train less. People will sort of understand if we have pieces in place so that, there are what I call guardrails so that less mistakes are made. Because a lot of processes right now, especially if you have a lot of people working the same spreadsheet, the same Word docs, the same whatever, sending stuff around by email, a lot of communication time, a lot of queue time, and a lot of rework because there are mistakes being made. So that's as far as I wanted to go today. We went for, I didn't mean to go for 3.5 hours, but that's where we are. We covered a lot. We built out some scenarios. We originally did some of this in Make because of the data structure we were working with initially, but I actually think with this now, if with this particular scenario, we should be able to do some of this in like decrementing stock counts and stuff. We did it in make.com, but we might even be able to do it directly in Airtable now with the new data structure. So let me see. We might take if there's any last minute questions, I'm just going to tinker with this for 5 more minutes and see if that's going to be possible. If we can avoid using make.com for this completely. Noah says, I'm working on the similar problem but with AI agents. Have 50 constraints for shipping, 500 locations. That's intense. Yeah, that's super intense. So I think what we want here is another action. So when it moves to in transit, then what we want to do is we want to update a record. We're going to need to find a record, right? And I think this is what we had trouble with before. So we need to search in the stock levels table. Let me see if we can pull this off. This is what we had trouble with last time. So check stock levels. And then the table was our stock levels table. We're going to search based on condition. We're going to add a condition where bean type is, let's see, this is going to be, let me bump that down. No, what do I need to do? I need to make the browser wider. Oh, I see it. Just need to scroll. Okay. I need to scroll over. I'm fighting with a vertical streaming format, and so we want to make this where the bean type contains, so we need to make this a dynamic value, and this is going to be from our original record again. It's going to match the SKU, I guess you call that, where the bean type matches the SKU, and the warehouse matches, again, this is going to be dynamic, where the warehouse is the source warehouse, or from warehouse, I guess. We're going to grab a record. Probably there's only going to be one, so we'll just call that a maximum. Oh, that didn't take for some reason. From warehouse. Name, that works. Okay. And we'll test that action out. And it says, bana, there's a record right there. So it found a record, and it shows our stock level. So the next thing I want to know is, can we, we'll do some conditional logic here. And we're going to say, we got two things. And this is the one thing I don't know if we can do in Airtable. This is where actually make.com did really well, because we had a part of our scenario where in this scenario, if we have a quick look at this, the change came in to basically the transfer request came in here. Okay. Then we pulled the stock levels. We checked the stock levels, and then we set a variable over here that said, do we have enough stock? And we did some math on this. We said, make sure that the available stock is greater to or equal than the amount that's being requested right now. And if it is, then we can go ahead and make those updates. And if not, we might send a Slack message, or we might do whatever. We might reject it. We can go in another direction. So I would need to experiment with this a little bit more and see how much of that is going to be possible in Airtable, because again, I'm sort of experimenting with their automation system right now. I've only used it a bit because I've always run into the limitations of what you can't do. So let me see. So run actions if this group, and what we'll say is, sorry, let's go back over a bit. The find records field, nope, not that. Try that again. So the find records field values, stock level. Contains. I wonder why that doesn't give me a numeric option. Do we have the ability to set a variable of some kind? I'm still very much learning Airtable. Again, the automation side of things, I'm not as deep into. I'm pretty sure if we go back to our data, this is a numeric value, so I would expect that the automations, let me see if I can figure out. I'm just going to delete this for a minute. Delete group. Yeah, get rid of that. Run a script. That might be an option. Sort list. We have a bunch of third-party integrations. Send email, update record, find record. Sort list, run script. Let me just try that condition again. I feel like I'm missing something. Conditional logic. Find records. Values. It even recognizes that that's numeric right there, so I'm not sure why it's not giving me numeric operators. It's not scrollable. I want to say is like is not empty. I don't know. Can I add another condition? And contains. Yeah, these operators are not great. So what I want to be able to do here is, let me see. I think in order to accomplish this now, what I would have to do is add another field. Is dynamic going to, yeah, is that going to give me what I want though? Edit conditions, get rid of this one. So I see when a record matches condition, the dynamic values don't, or can I use operators in here? How do I do math? Basically, I need to do a math operation. If the stock level is greater than or equals, that's what I'm trying to do. But I think what I would need to do in order to accomplish that is probably we would need to add a, so let's go back to our data here. We probably need to go to our transfer requests. And then we would need to probably the transfer request, instead of using this SKU, this probably needs to be a related field. And then we would need another dynamic field in here that was yes or no. Is there enough stock for this? So I'm a little bit disappointed here at the limitation of our automation. Again, we can do this in make.com, and we already have. That might be the way. We'll just manage this particular automation in make.com because we already did that. We already did that over here in this automation here where we just did a simple calculation, right? This is our calculation. If available stock is greater to or equal, is greater than or equal to the amount of stuff that someone's asking for, then yes, otherwise no. So this was really straightforward in Make. I'm super surprised that Airtable doesn't have this ability. So I think for this particular automation, we would have to manage this. And maybe I would do it like this. Maybe I would leave just the activity of creating the log entry. I would maybe leave that here in Airtable, just so I didn't. The log entry can stay in Airtable. Just create that in transit log entry, and then have the actual code that did the changing the stock levels. Maybe that have that happen in make.com. It's sort of unfortunate to. It's always a little bit annoying to manage things in multiple systems. There's also the ability to run scripting. So I'd be willing to look into that and see how far you could get with it. Yeah. Make is kind of nice. Yep. It is easy to see, though, how decisions we make now about our modeling, our data modeling, do affect things later. Like, for instance, if we go back into our data, right, the SKU matches just based on, um, we don't actually have uh, an enumerated value. So we probably want to have another table just called SKU. And then this would be a reference to SKU. And then also this would be a reference to SKU, right? And you see how the relationships now gets a little bit more complicated. So probably just make.com because that's going to keep things simplest for now. Yeah. Yeah, right on. Any last questions? We're just down. I think we sort of meandered off into the ether of the depths, the bowels. I just wanted to see how far we could get with this in a little bit. I wanted to see what are the limitations in the automation side of things. How far can we get with that? Again, I would probably just do the log keeping side of things in Airtable because that seems to work really well. And then the actual logic for moving around inventory. So when this record moves from here to here, we want to take those 35 stock out of, we want to take those 35 stock for, geez, what was that? Aurora Bloom from Calgary. So in the Aurora Bloom Calgary, this is going to go down by 35. Josh says, can you make SKU related for primary column on the first table? I don't, maybe. Let's try it out right now. Let's add a one from scratch. Table 4, we're going to just call our beans here. Let's see, one was Sierra Solstice. We'll just rename this beans. One was called Velvet Ember and Aurora Bloom. And then whatever. So then here, can we link? I don't think we can. Yeah, it doesn't look like it. So in this particular case, what you would have is you would have an identifier in this field. You'd have an identifier in this field that sort of encapsulates the relationship between Sierra Solstice Edmonton. And so it would, if this was your, instead of bean type, this is like warehouse ID or something like that. Warehouse stock ID. We're just making this up. Right? And then we have another field here that's a link to another record. It's going to be beans. We don't want to link to multiple, just one. That's fine. Don't want lookup fields just yet. This is called bean. This is going to be over here. And then this is, here's where we go, Sierra Solstice, right? Now this creates new complexities because lookups now become mandatory. It creates a little bit more complexity in our, so this looks something like this. Something like that. And then in our transfer requests, there should actually be a link from this field. This should also link back to, probably this should link to, where is it at? Yeah, so the SKU here should link to beans instead of, that's going to be a link to another record back here. Just a single link. That's fine. Don't want lookups yet. It just kind of figured that out, which I'm impressed with. And then the same with the transfer request logs. We do the same thing. This should link back to the transfer request ID should link back to probably the transfer request. That's fine. Don't want lookups. That's awesome. That worked too. Um, I don't know which these were supposed to be, but then you sort of end up. The problem with this is that when we go back to transfer requests, we end up with this related field that's going to get really, really full. That's maybe not a bad thing. Technically web. Are you from? I used to live in Edmonton. I'm in West Kelowna right now, but I'm going to be in Edmonton in February actually, which is not very far away. Yeah. So the modeling of this can get more complex, and then there's more testing and stuff. But I mean, start small, incremental changes, and slowly work towards your goal in that way. Again, the data. This is not what I'm presenting the end user. To my end user, I want to give them just a nice interface. Hey, make your transfer requests here. You can see now our SKU is invalid. So if we go back and edit this form, and actually this is what we should have done before. Um, Transfer requests, instead of SKU, you could even just make it an enum, just like a drop down, a select list, a select box or whatever. Let me see. SKU, the field, link to beans, save, invalid layout. Do I need to like turn it back on and back off and on again? SKU, there we go. Yeah, see, and I don't like this. I don't like if we're done with this, back, publish. Now it's asking me to, yeah, I guess pick one. Yeah, so that's fine. Transfer requests from to count requested by, and then I have to pick one and I can create from there. I want to give my users really nice interfaces, just so then they can't screw it up. And then you can start to build out relatively decent interfaces for, you can even just get more advanced in terms of the interfaces you can build. I would take something like this as far as I could, or I usually will. How far can we get without building custom, right? That's going to go a long way. All right. We're just going to wrap up here right away. This is actually a pretty long live today. If there's any automators in here, some of you are already there. We set up a free Discord. Hey, we got some new people in there. Right on. Never mind. No, the streaming mode. Turn all the names off. It makes sense. Have a free Discord. There's a link in my bio if you want to jump in. There's just a few of us in there. We're just supporting each other through our automation journey. And so if you're struggling with anything or you want to jump in there and chip in, we definitely appreciate that. And otherwise, we'll just leave the live open for a few more minutes, answer a few questions. All of my lives go on to YouTube afterwards, so you can always follow up on there if there's anything that you missed. And I did end up with a couple viewers on YouTube, which is kind of fun. This is my first time streaming on YouTube Live, which we're going to start. We're going to start doing a bit more. Baby Z says, I like Airtable, but have been preferring Notion. I think for this particular problem, because there's a lot of similarities or overlap in what you can do with either tool, which is pretty great. In this particular case, I'm wanting to hand off really sort of no-brainer interfaces to my users. I know you can do forms in Notion now, and they work pretty good. I don't want my users in the data. I just want to give them a form and a button they can push that'll sort of kick off an automation and bring things to the next level. That's not always 100% doable in Airtable, but I'll try and take this as far as I can. Notion, on the other hand, you can model a lot of the same stuff, but then you sort of end up in this scenario where you don't really, the amount of control you have over what changes are being made are a lot less. In this particular case, I want pretty high degree of control over when a user submits this thing, it's going to make these changes, these notifications are sent. In order to get to the next stage, for instance, if we go back to our Kanban board here, in order for this to get from in transit to fulfilled, or whatever the next status is, there are criteria, right? Can we lock that down as much as possible? Because if we can put constraints in place and reduce the errors in the process, it just makes everything go smoother. It's scalable. It's easy to train people on those processes. It's going to allow us to start tying in more details, automating more parts of the business as it becomes more reliable. And so that's always my goal. With Notion, I don't know how doable that is because Notion's pretty open-ended. For me, it solves a little bit different problem. Yeah. Yeah. Technically Web3, back to your comment. I know lots of people from Edmonton. If you're not a part of the Dev Edmonton Society group, they have a Slack you can get in on, and there's lots of folks there if you're recruiting. Yep. All right, we're going to just go for a few more minutes. We're just right at the tail end of the live. It's a long one today. Man, we got hung up on Airtable for a long time. Or not Airtable, sorry, make.com. We got stuck on this problem where we were trying to dynamically pull one value from, trying to select the value dynamically from a second module based on an input on the first module. And it was a real doozy. It was a loop-de-loop. Yep. Any last minute questions on the live before we shut things down? Again, we'll have the full recap on YouTube here probably later tonight once I get it downloaded. And I will I'll send you a link to the recording afterwards. Any last minute questions before I shut it down? Appreciate everybody hanging out. I see there's a few folks here that have been here for the long haul, and appreciate that. Appreciate you coming out tonight. All right. All right. Once again, we're just dropping off for the night. We're just leaving it open for any last minute comments. Do definitely join my YouTube. You can find the link in my bio if you're not following. If you're a maker, if you're into automation, we have a Discord community. We just started, just ground floor. And just a few of us wanting to help each other out along the way in our automation journey. And yeah, just want to say I appreciate everybody for stopping out today. I can smell dinner. So I'm going to shut down the live there and go get some grub. Thanks to everyone who tuned in on YouTube. Had a couple of watchers from YouTube. We're going to lean into that, I think, in 25. Live in 25, and I think YouTube's the place to be. Not sure about the little red book yet. Maybe Instagram. I'm looking at this fan base. It kind of looks like TikTok. Feels a bit different. Definitely YouTube. More YouTube this year. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Once again, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. And I hope you have a great weekend.